Hello everybody, welcome into our latest live broadcast. Today it is the 20th of September. It's Friday, 2024. I'm your host, CareyHolzman, and today is the final part of our whole 10 gig upgrade to Synology, which requires a 10 gig switch, 10 gig compatible Ethernet cables. We've previously experimented with SFP ports versus Ethernet ports. If you've missed any of that, you have no idea what I'm talking about. We have links to the prior videos in the description below this video. What you need to know is we're not going to bother with SFP ports, nor do I think you should either. That's for business use, and it's just way overkill for a home user. So we're going to be focusing strictly on just regular, familiar Ethernet cables. But where you may be accustomed to 1 gig speed, maybe you've got 2.5. We're going to jump right to 10 and see what the difference is and whether or not it's worth the money. It might be for you. It might not be for you. And we're not here to sell it to you. We're here to explain it, who it's for, why you might want it. Otherwise, doesn't apply. We've got a 10 gig upgradable network interface card that is made by Synology, that is designed solely for Synology products that accept this card. By default, the Synology, this one we've got in front of us, is the 923 Plus. It has two 1 gig Ethernet ports. A lot of others will start with 2.5. Synology does not. I don't know why. But this Synology 923 Plus has the ability to upgrade to 10 gig for a $100 upgrade. You might recognize this computer. This is the Johnsbow build if you've been following along with the channel. We had a diagnostic and repair on this on a members only video. And we're going to use that as our demo. This computer has a 2.5 gig Ethernet port built into the motherboard, and that's not going to be 10, is it? So to bring this up to 10, I've purchased a TP-Link PCIe card. These are around $80, and we'll just plug it into an empty slot, and we've got 10 gig. It's pretty much that easy, or at least that's what they say. And then we've got a bunch of files copied over to this computer. They took me over an hour and a half to copy. These are very large 100+ gig video files from my YouTube channel. And when we copy them right now, we're at 2.5 gig going to, again, if you've been watching our videos, our BE95 Mesh Wi-Fi 7, which is incredibly fast. This is as fast from wireless, mesh point to mesh point, as a 2.5 gig wired Ethernet cable, which is crazy fast. Now, the reason for this is we have a 2.5 gig download speed here. So you can pay for a faster download speed from your internet service provider if it becomes available in your area, but it won't do you any good unless you replace the modem, and you're going to have computer hardware that can talk that fast, not likely going to be wireless. And that means you're going to need a network card that can support 2.5 gig. If your network card in your computer is still 1 gig, it doesn't matter how fast your internet is, and you can pay as much extra for it as you want. You're only going to be drawing 1 gig from it until you get that 2.5 gig connector. So if your system's relatively new, it'll already have that, likely. If your system's older, you can buy a 2.5 gig card to add to it, or even a USB dongle to plug in. It's not that big of a deal. Your network will only be as slow, or as fast, I should say, as the slowest component. So when we want to demo this 10 gig transfer to this 10 gig computer, we have to make sure we use category 6A Ethernet cables into a 10 gig switch. But when we plug our internet into that switch, that will only operate at 2.5 maximum, despite that these are 10. So when these talk to each other at 10, we should see up to 1,000 megabytes per second, whereas before we were getting around 115, 120. So what took an hour and a half, let's just call it an hour and a half, to copy the files, should take 10 times less than that, right? So that's the benefit of 10 gig. You have to wire 10 gig. The devices have to be wired together. If anything between the two 10 gig devices runs slower, then that thing that slows it down is the max speed you're going to run at. If this is, to give you an example, if this computer has a 2.5 gig wired connection to that mesh point there on the table, and that mesh point can establish 2.5 gig wireless to the other mesh point, Why did it take an hour and a half? And why were my speeds only 110, 120? Because the Synology in the other room, which I think is a 418, it looks just like this, but it's only got 1 gig Ethernet attached to it. So, while these two units can talk at twice the speed, as soon as it goes to talk to the unit, the 418 in the other room, that's our bottleneck, that's our choke point. That's as fast as it can deliver the data, we've saturated it. There's no upgrade, that's it. You have to replace the unit. So what we've got here is yet again a very similar looking unit on the outside, a much bigger number on the front from a 418 to a 923 plus. But we have this little access door on the back, which should enable us to buy and install this Synology made, specialty made 10 gig Ethernet card into that. Once that's done, this should have 10 gig ability. But if we connected this computer, let me rephrase, if we replace this to where the other NAS is located, then our next lowest speed is the speed between the wireless, which is 2.5. So the fastest this can provide data will be at 2.5. Unless we plug directly into it, or we have local wired cables going into a 10 gig switch, then it can operate at 10 gig. So 10 gig must be wired up directly, and then the 10 gig switch can be plugged in to your router, whatever speed your router is. And so anything connected to the router, including your internet, will run at that router speed. Or if you're wireless, your wireless is your choke point. You'll never get 10 gig on a wireless in 2024. So not on home wireless. So then that'll be your choke point. So everything has to be equal to run at that top speed. Everything must be wired with Cat6a cabling or SFP cabling, which we won't get into. And it's pretty much all the same rules of Ethernet, right? It's going to auto-negotiate. It's just going to work. It's very simple. Nothing's any different. It's going to run a lot faster. Now, anytime you want to go faster, it's going to cost you more money. The good news is 10 gig Ethernet is now affordable for home users. It used to not be. If you think it's expensive now, you should have seen it 2 years ago. So this is considered affordable. 10 gig Ethernet will get very, very hot. That's the nature of the beast. 10 gig Ethernet is a very noisy signal. It's when you're going over copper, it's very noisy. And so there's a lot of processing that has to take place. Very processor intensive. That causes the cards to get hot. They draw more power, obviously. Once again, you want to draw more power, you can get more speed, you're going to spend more money. It's just like buying a real fast car. You're not going to get good efficiency in gas mileage. It's going to cost a lot of money. And for some people, totally worth it. For me personally, understand that when we're done with this video, we're going to deploy this. We're going to actually use it. But the way it's going to work is anytime we're in the office where the Synology is located, we will have computers in that office running into a 10 gig switch, and then the 10 gig switch will plug into the back of the router. Now, this router or this mesh point has two 10 gig ports on the back of it. So if we're only hooking up two things, say the Synology and this computer, those will communicate with each other directly without the need to buy a switch at the 10 gig speed. And then anything else connected to the routers all runs at whatever speed, you know, either at the 2.5 gig limit of the router or at a slower speed if I'm on an older computer or laptop. Whatever is the slowest device is the maximum speed you will attain, despite the capability of the device you're connecting to. Whatever the speed limit is the speed you're supposed to drive, regardless of the capability of the car you're driving. Now, hello everybody. Forgot to say hello. How rude of me. I'm so excited to get started today. Let's see. Who do we have in our chat room today? Friday. Friday. Our Friday's great. Paul Gray joins us from Australia. He says, I'm going to have to catch this stream later today. And he wants a fridge magnet, an inspired by CareyHolzman fridge magnet. And Paul Gray makes 3 Australian $20 super chat contributions Right on. Thank you for your friendship, your kindness, and your support, Paul, as always. I see two $20 Australian, one $10 Australian. Kyle Hubick became a new supporter. Right on. Welcome into our tech club, Kyle. Glad to have you. Alan Lindos says hello. Mike's Unboxing and Reviews and How-To joins us from England. Mike's got a tech channel very similar to mine, where you see real tech working on real things with real practical advice. Highly recommended if you've not checked out his channel. I think if you like my channel, well, you just might like his even better. So always happy to see Mike joining us. And where was I? I lost my place. Doman 2000 says hello. William Denton says hello. He's looking forward to our 10 gig discussion. He says he's added the same switch and adapter from his Mac to his Synology. A lot of Macs have 10 gig Ethernet ports, by the way. Thomas Mac T says hello. And Gil Garcia, Mark Baggett, Rick Lakes, and David Graham all joining us, along with Barry Klein and Glenn's Music, PC Fishing, Luke Greenia, John Svensson, Brad Ravel, Bull142 saying hello. Claudio Ventura says hello. From Portugal, right on. Arnold Schmidt saying hello. Matthew Burden says hello. Along with Dave E., 3D Everything, and Avery Ramstorth and Paul Connolly. Garfield Rupe just renewed his membership, now a member for 21 months. He says, I must admit this was a surprise. I walked 107 feet this morning. Right on. Well, that sounds like your physical therapy is working. That's great. Let's see. SFN Life became a supporter. Welcome in. Thank you for joining us here and supporting the channel. Oystein saying hello from Norway. Welcome into Oystein. Jose Lopez says hello. Richard Palmentier joins us, and Robert Roth. Dazzle555 joining us from the UK. And also Patrick Doyle from the UK. Right on. Welcome in. Nick Caffrey with €5. And Nick joins us from the Netherlands, I want to say. PC Fishing says, have I done something to offend you? I've noticed in past streams you've not responded back to my greetings, and I'm just wondering. Yeah, please don't take that stuff personally. When we're getting ready to do the show, if this is pre-show chat you're talking about, sometimes I poke my head in, or Mara will poke her head in, and we'll say hello to whoever's just right there on the screen, and then we go back to doing what we're doing. And then once the show starts, I do try to acknowledge everybody, but no, it's just an oversight. It's not, please don't take that personally. My apologies if you felt that we were alienating you in some way. That certainly is not our intention. Steve Dodd renews his membership, now a member for 22 months, and says hello. Steve Larkin says hello. Marsman50 says hello. Mark Gaines joining us from Northern Ireland. Roger Nyrad says hello. Icaranis says hello. Tudo Sobre Bitcoins says cheers from Portugal. Wow, 2 viewers from Portugal. Captain Blinsky saying hello. Tapayaku Osma says hello from Finland. You've been an inspiration. Right on. Yeah, I'd love to visit Helsinki one day and go to the PC demo conference. It's on my bucket list. Gil Garcia says hello. Steve in Texas says hello from Fort Worth. John Williams says he checked out Salem Techsperts, the YouTube channel I recommended. He says they are different. I think they're hilarious. And very, very good at what they do. Let's see. Patrick Manny says hello. And Scott says hello. And JD52 WTF says Finland is fantastic. I bet it is. I bet it is. I hope to determine that one day from personal experience. All right. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. And yeah, this should be an exciting show. Where we left off, if you've missed prior shows, is we went over the installation of the drives and the configuration of the drives using the Synology, what they call Disk Station Manager software, or DSM, and how to configure it. Not only just install the drives, but just an out-of-the-box overview of the product, along with out-of-box overview of Synology branded certified drives, which some companies require. And then got that installed, set up our storage pool, did all that. And then the next video, I thought I was going to demonstrate it, but that turned out to be an instructional video, which there's a lot to talk about. And if you missed that instructional video, some of this may go over your head. I'll try my best to reiterate the important parts that we're going to discuss, but there's a lot of things we won't talk about today in detail because it's lengthy, and we already covered it in the prior part of this, the instructional part, the theoretical part. And now we're going to do the demonstration part. So we talked about the theory, we talked about how it's supposed to work, we talked about the pros and cons of the different cables, the different speeds, and today we demonstrate. Essentially, I can tell you already what's going to happen. If we set this up correctly, my 110 megabyte per second transfer speeds should be 1,000 megabytes. In a perfect world, it'd be 1,000. I don't know that all the drives in here can deliver 1,000. If each one of these hard drives can deliver 200 apiece, and we've got 4 of them, that's 800. I think you need like 7 drives if you want mechanical drives, if you really want to saturate that 10 gig. 10 gig is very difficult to saturate in a consumer environment because even with solid state drives, when you deal with them with the NAS like we did yesterday with the TerraMaster solid state network attached storage, even at 10 gig, you're probably not going to see 10 gig. You might, it's possible. 10 gig also means you're probably transferring very large files, and you would enable something called jumbo frames, which I don't really want to get into today. We're not going to enable jumbo frames today. We're just going to do an apples to apples comparison of 10 gig versus 1 gig without changing anything. And I'll also show you 2.5 gig, and we can probably demonstrate 5. But the math should be pretty easy for you, right? So if I can get, let's say I can get 129 megabytes per second max out of a standard 1 gig Ethernet wired connection, then a 2.5 should be 2.5 times better than that, which would mean around 300 in a perfect world. Likely maybe around 250, we'll see. So if we go double that again to 5, we should be getting somewhere between 500 and 600 megabytes per second. If we double that again to 10, we should be getting somewhere between, I'd say, 900 to 1,000 would be what I would be expecting. Now again, it depends. You've got to be running the right cables, and you've got to have equipment that can keep up with that data rate. Remember, at 1,000 megabytes per second, that's 4 times faster than a hard drive, a mechanical drive. So if you're running an older computer with a mechanical drive and you slap a 10 gig card in it, that mechanical drive is what's going to be your bottleneck. You can't go any faster than the drive can read and write. On the other hand, if you have a solid state SATA drive, that will peak out at 550 megabytes per second. So even if we're feeding 1,000 into the machine, the drive is, it's like a hot dog eating contest. Which one of these people can eat more? This can only eat 550 megabytes a second, and if we're trying to feed it 1,000, it can't choke it down. So then that becomes your bottleneck. So you're going to need an NVMe solid state drive, Gen 3, that those can generally do anywhere from 1,000 to 3,500, right? So now that's no longer your bottleneck. You got to think about these things. You need the other device you're talking to not only has to have the 10 gig connection, it's got to be able to feed and fill that 10 gig connection. So it's still going to be better than a 5 gig or 2.5, but can you take advantage of the full 10? I mean, you got to think about, does the equipment you're connecting have the ability to communicate and saturate that full 10 gig? Now, there are USB 10 gig adapters. Those are all Thunderbolt 3 right now. Some new Thunderbolt 4/USB 4 ones came out. They're only available on AliExpress right now, and they're 3 to 4 times more money. So regular USB to Ethernet dongle, like one of these here. This is like a USB type A to a 1 gig or 2.5 gig. $20, $30, They even have these up to 5 gig. $30, not a big deal. $35. You want to go to 10 gig? These things are massive. 10 gig gets super hot. It's going to get power from USB on the 10 gig one. And that 5 volt power needs to step down to like between 1 and 2 volts, something like that. And it has to do all this denoising and conversioning, and it gets really, really, really hot. It's very expensive. And they're only just now coming out with USB 4 or Thunderbolt 4, which is 40 gigabits per second. Now, if you say, wait a minute, isn't the USB 3, 3.1, 3.2, 10 gigs per second? And if your dongle's 10 gigs per second, isn't that all you need? No, that's not how it works, unfortunately. 10 gigs per second is the total amount of data throughput, which includes all your overhead. That includes all of the communication that's happening and error correction that's happening. So on a 10 gig connection, 10 gig Ethernet connection, it's doing a bunch of error correction, right? So you're not going to get the absolute true amount of data that's being processed, which is probably closer to maybe 1100 megabytes per second, if you could really see all the error correction and communications that's going on along with your data transfer. And then when you plug that into a USB port that's 10 gig, that also has its own overhead taking up some of that 10 gig. It's not going to give you all 10 gig. So this isn't going to give you all 10 gig, and that's not going to give you all 10 gig. What's it going to give you? Maybe like 9, maybe. So they don't make a 10 gig Ethernet to USB adapter unless it's Thunderbolt. So it could be Thunderbolt 3 or Thunderbolt 4. And in the case of Thunderbolt 4, USB 4 will also work. You really want that 40 gigabit per second. You need that overhead in the USB to have enough left over. Well, you have plenty left over to do the 10 gig on this side. And the 10 gig is going to get really, really hot. A lot of 10 gig switches have fans. They can be noisy. Sometimes they get so hot, they'll shut down. So when we're talking about a USB adapter, they don't usually have fans. They have a giant heatsink. Is it worth paying all that money and dealing with all these ifs, ands, or buts to get that speed? I think so. I think the technology has gotten to a point now where it's stabilized for consumer use. Now, if you ever walk into a corporation and you go into their server room, it's very loud in there. And primarily what you're hearing are fans. So you can imagine when you have racks and racks and racks of this stuff, if one can get hot, imagine how many hundreds will get all stacked up together, side by side in a big room. They're often, it's not uncommon to find that they're liquid cooled, and the plumbing looks like the plumbing to a house. It actually runs underneath the floor and goes up into the rack systems and has big pumps that move that fluid around. It's big money, but we're talking about some serious data transfer, seriously fast latency, and sometimes extremely long runs from one building to another building requiring fiber optic cables. So that's a whole nother world, and that's why IT jobs can pay so much. It's a real skill that you're probably not going to learn on YouTube. Though that being said, I suppose we should get things started. Charles Purdy renews membership, now a member for 3 months. He says, hello, Carey and Mara and everyone in the chat. Thank you, Charlie. Paul Gray says, is it safe to say none of these will actually work any faster than the slowest link? if the slowest link is in the chain of what you're trying to communicate to. You got to think of it like plumbing. If I have a bunch of water pressure on this side of the house and my water pressure is really weak, let's say in the middle of the house, what do you think the water pressure is going to be like at the top of the house? Assuming it's all connected together, once we get to that low pressure side, if we don't repressurize it again, we're just going to keep losing pressure going up. So when these devices are connected together to one switch, they will communicate at the maximum speed. So when we install this, the maximum speed will be 10. When we install this, the maximum speed will be 10. And when we install a 10 gig switch, the maximum speed will be 10. So when this is talking to this or this is talking to this, they're going through a 10 gig switch for a maximum speed of 10 gigs. So our choke point may be just how fast these hard drives can deliver data, which may be maybe 800. I don't know. We'll see. But then we're going to plug that switch into our mesh. And that mesh is going to limit us at 2.5. So anytime we try to connect to any other computers in any other rooms or the internet, even though we're connected to the 10 gig switch over here, we're now going outside of that over to this. And now we're limited to the 2.5 maximum, up to 2.5. Now, if I have a laptop that's wireless and it's connected at a comparatively slow speed, and I want to connect this 10 gig wired computer through the mesh to the other mesh, to the mesh upstairs, to the wireless laptop, then the wireless connection at the laptop to the mesh is our slowest point. So no matter how fast I can go, it's like being in a Ferrari in rush hour traffic. You're not going any faster than the car in front of you. So the data flows very much like a river or a lake. I think that's the best way to explain it. Plumbing and electronic circuitry are very, very similar with the path to least resistance, and where in a similar way with plumbing or even with electronics, where the whole system is held up is if there is a slow item in the chain. Now, because of the way modern networking works, I can have my Amazon Fire Stick wirelessly, and I can have my laptop wirelessly. It doesn't matter what speed they run at, unless I'm communicating with them from the 10 gig. Or let's say from the wireless laptop, I want to transfer a bunch of files off of this. So this is 10 gig with this card plugged into a 10 gig switch. That 10 gig switch is plugged into the 2.5 gig mesh point. And the laptop upstairs, it can only do, let's say, a gigabit connection, or maybe even less than that, maybe half of that. So while this has the ability, like a Ferrari, to go really fast, that laptop upstairs being on Wi-Fi is limited to, let's say, 30 megabytes per second data transfer. So this will deliver that 30, right? It will deliver up to 10 if everything that's in the chain is running at 10. On the other hand, if these two devices are talking to each other, they're connected together with a 10 gig switch. It doesn't matter what's happening over here. I can still have that laptop. I can still be doing whatever I want to, browsing the internet. Everybody in every room of this place could have their computers on, wired or wireless. We're not talking to them. We're just talking between these two. That has no impact on us. If they're talking to us, then the slow point will either be the mesh or them themselves, but not this. Or if they want to talk to this computer. Once you hit that 10 gig switch, everything can run up to 10 gig, and anything plugged into a slower switch or router will run up to that speed, depending on the device that you're connecting with and what it's capable of. I hope that doesn't confuse you. See, to me, it's very simple. It's just a freeway. You've got a fast car. You've got other cars on the freeway. It doesn't mean you can't drive your car. The problem is when you get behind one of those slow cars, that's going to limit how fast you can go. And it doesn't matter what you're driving. Could be a Ferrari, could be a Volkswagen, doesn't matter. It's kind of like that. Elijah Dickens says hello. Welcome in, welcome in. All right, so as you can see, we've got our Johnsbow build all up and running. And what we're going to need to do for this example is install this card. Now this card is available. Everything I'm using we have links to on Amazon. So for example, if we go to our window capture, which is down here somewhere, window capture. Okay, so there's a lot of these different Wi-Fi, not Wi-Fi. They make these in Wi-Fi. This is a wired USB Ethernet adapter, and they make these in 2.5 gig. They make these in 1 gig. They make these with USB Type-C and USB Type-A, or some come with an adapter to be either or. You'll see they're pretty inexpensive, $12, $24. And they go up to, I believe Wavelink has one that's 5 gigs. Let's see if I can search for Wavelink. I guess I need to be more specific. See, a lot of these, they want Thunderbolt to go to the faster speeds for some. Well, that's still 2.5. Wavelink 5 gig USB NIC network interface card. That's 2.5, 2.5. 5 gig USB-C to Ethernet. 37 bucks. There it is. Thunderbolt 4 or 3 compatible USB Type-C. So again, you're going to need a fast USB connection, or your bottleneck will be right here. That's the problem. And then when you want to go to 10, you're just, if you want to go to 10, it gets really expensive. So we go up here and just change this to a 10. Look at the massive size of this and look at the price. Look at how big these are. They're massive. And you're absolutely going to require Thunderbolt 3 or Thunderbolt 4. That's it. In the case of Thunderbolt 4, you can use USB 4. But in the case of Thunderbolt 3, it just ain't going to work unless you have Thunderbolt 3, which most Apple products do have Thunderbolt already built in. But in the Windows world, yeah, there's not a whole lot to choose from here. They get really, really hot. They're extraordinarily expensive. So just know that's an option. There's a reason why we're not demoing that. A little rich for our blood. This is the card I'm going to be putting into the Johnsbow tower beside me. It's, they say 20% off. It's $80. That's reasonable. These are the cables we're going to be using. These are the ultra thin Ethernet cables that are snag free. I don't know how I've ever lived my life without these super thin Ethernet cables. They're power over Ethernet compatible. They're just like any other Ethernet cable, but really, really thin. If you're hard on them, you can easily break them. And they make them in various colors. They're very reasonably priced, and they make them in various lengths. All right, all the way up to 50 feet. By the way, you can get HDMI cables with this really thin, flexible cable as well. Change your life, man. Tell you what. As far as the switch goes, I decided to pick a TP-Link TL-SX105. That was the most affordable. This is a 5-port switch. Now be aware, some switches only have a 10 gig input, if you will, and then all the rest are 2.5s. And that's to share a faster connection overall with everybody. But I want 10 gig across the board, so this switch looks like any other. And it will auto-negotiate down, as you can see on this picture. It says 10 gig, 5 gig if that light lights up. And if this light lights up, it's 2.5, 1, or even 100. So it's fully backwards compatible. And then this shows you if the left LED is this color and the right LED is this color, that's what speed you're connected at as far as the switch is concerned. This is an unmanaged switch. There's no programming it. You just plug it in and use it. You could buy this switch and never use it for 10 gig. If you want to spend $235 and then use it like a $35 switch, you could totally do that if you want to. So that's what we went with. We bought this using your contributions, and from your support, we're able to make these purchases. As for the Synology, they sent us the 923 Plus with Synology drives and the upgradable 10 gig card in exchange for a review. So full disclosure. When the review is done, our goal is to replace our 418, take the drives out of it, put them into the 923 Plus, run the migration wizard. That should come up automatically. We should not have to move any data, and the whole process should be very quick and simple. With that being said, I suppose it's time for me to get to work. So let's go back over to camera 1. Here I am. Back over to the chat room. Barry Klein said that USB 10 gig shown at the top of the list looks big enough to make an outstanding coffee cup warmer. You may not be wrong. Your coffee might get too hot. It'd start boiling. David Graham said those really thin network cables look like if you look at them too hard, they'll break. They're not that fragile, but if you pull on them, you will pull the cable. You'll rip the fine wires inside. You'll rip them right away from the connector. So don't grab them and yank them. Or if you're running the cable across a floor and you're rolling a chair back and forth, your wheels on your chair over time will eat right through the sleeve of that cable and down into the cables inside. So you definitely want to be aware of that. At Studio B, I had a situation where I had to run the cable across the floor, and those thin cables are just so much more flexible. And then as I was walking, I'd step on it, and then over time, I guess I ripped the sleeve of the cable, and the cables inside, the wires inside, were exposed. When the wires are exposed, quite often you're bleeding out signal, almost like water. It's like having a leak. And so that can affect your data transfer speeds. It'll still work in that scenario, but if you keep walking on it, you'll eventually start eating through the insulation on the wires themselves, and it'll gradually get worse and worse until you get through one of the wires. If you get through one of the grounds versus one of the data receive wires, your connection's probably going to drop or be really, really inconsistent with speed. It starts acting up real weird. So when you use these thin cables, they're not really intended to be plugged and unplugged and moved around a lot the way I do it. And the same is true, I just spit. The same is true with the HDMI cables as well. But for me, the cables are cheap, so I don't care if I break them, I just go get another one, plug it in. They don't break like every week, but it's not uncommon for me to replace them once a year. It's pretty normal. All right. Steve Dodd renewed his membership, now a member for 22 months. Right on. Thank you, Steve. Mike's Unboxing Reviews is predicting and guessing that we're not going to see more than 600 megabytes per second out of mechanical drives. Well, let's find out. We can theorize all day. What do we want to do first? We need to put this card into this computer, so I guess I can start with that. That should be straightforward enough. I need to shut this down. Let's go over to the desktop, which should be this input right here. Now, as you can see, we've got a second screen on here that apparently is defaulted to be my main screen because I don't have any desktop icons here. So let me see if I right click. Oh no, can I do this? Display settings. Oh, and it's going to appear on my front monitor, not on my secondary, which means I have to, can I move this? Right click and move. Oh, there's an Alt key command to move the window over. That's okay. You know what? I'm just going to step around and look at the tiny screen up here and see if I can just minimize it. If I can find the mouse. Here's the other problem. I don't know if the screens are set one above the other, if it's on the right or the left. I found it. Okay, that wasn't too difficult. Now that I can see it, I want monitor 2 to be the main monitor. You know what? Let's just duplicate them. That'll solve the problem. That's fine. Now what I see and what's on the front will be the same. I've got this test directory. This has a bunch of my video files of YouTube videos, and you can tell from the details just how big these files are. See the sizes of these? These are massive. These are over 100 gigs each. 100, 100, 150, 160. And this took me an hour and 40 minutes to copy over 1 gig. Just, that's a starting point. And you'll see as we increase the speed, the amount of time it takes will go down by the amount we're increasing. So 2.5 will be 2.5 times faster. 5 will be 5 times faster, and 10 will be up to 10 times faster. All right, so that's our test directory. That's ready to rock and roll. And on this machine, we have a fast NVMe drive here, 2 terabyte something. What is it? It's a 2 terabyte Samsung 970 EVO Plus. That's a Gen 3. That's fine. That'll more than keep up with 1,000 megabytes per second, because that drive will do 3,000 on the writes and 3,500 on the reads. All right, with that being said, let's shut it down. Shut this down, and we're going to go back to camera 1. And I'm going to unplug power from the back of this machine. Because when you plug in a card, whether it's a video card, a memory stick, your machine is still kind of on when you shut it off. This isn't the old... Remember the old days? Those of you who've been around computers for a while, Windows XP would say, it is now safe to turn off your computer. And then you'd have to physically hit a switch and shut it down. Okay, then you wouldn't need to unplug it. But because of the soft off and the soft on, which is, by the way, what everything does now, your television, everything but, say, an appliance. A lot of people confuse computers with appliances, right? An appliance, you can put a toaster in the closet, take it out in 30 years, plug it in, and it still toasts. You would not do that with a computer because too much will have changed, too many updates. You would be, if you plug this into the internet, it will no longer be able to protect itself. So, FYI, a computer is not a toaster. Many of you go, well, duh. But sometimes people treat them like toasters. They don't understand. All right. We got our TP-Link card here, and as you can see, we're doing everything live and unscripted, unrehearsed. We don't know if we have dead-on-arrival parts. We don't know if somebody switched the part in the box. We don't know, does this need a driver? Will it auto-load the driver? I just don't know. Working as a tech in the real world, we often have no idea when customers need our help exactly what machine they have, how they've configured it, what the problem is, or how we're going to solve it. And rarely, as a field service tech, do we see the same problem twice. When you work in corporate America, you work on all the same equipment all the time, and you become an expert at that company's equipment. But outside of that, you unless you're keeping up outside of it on your own, I don't know how to work on this stuff. That's not what we have at the office, you know. That's why a lot of office IT, they'll often get asked by the employees, hey, could you help me with my home computer after work? Nope, because a lot of times they don't know how. All right, so sometimes they know how, but they're so sick of working on computers all day, the last thing they want to do on their free time is work on yours. That's also a reason. All right, in the box, this is a standard looking Ethernet card. I mean, it's got a big old heatsink on it here. We're using regular Ethernet, no SFP. It does come with this shorter, forget what this is called, low profile PCIe, and that's if you have a computer that's, you know, half height. You can just remove this piece. It doesn't affect us today. And then down inside we should have, oh yeah, we have an instruction manual. We have an Ethernet cable, a thick one. Oh good, we have a CD-ROM with drivers on that. So let me just get in my time machine and go back to when I had a CD-ROM. I'm being sarcastic. I have a USB external DVD drive, but the drivers on this are going to be old. You don't want to use this. Even if you could, they're old. By the time they created this disk, put it in the package, got it distributed to a warehouse, then you finally bought it, it got delivered to your house, that driver is old. You do not want to use it. If you have no other way to get the driver, then use that one and then immediately go and get the latest driver. Okay, that's all I'm saying. Don't go, oh, it works, good enough. I mean, you can if you want to, but if you want my respect and you want to do things the right way, like if you were paid to do it, like it belonged to somebody else that you were being held accountable for, that's the way you should do it for yourself, in my opinion. Now, let me just look down in here. Yeah, we got a couple slots available. I guess I can put this, let's see, it needs a by 8. That makes sense. Okay, we'll put it in the bottom slot, I guess. So let me grab my driver. And I realize there's not a whole lot here for you to see, but I'm just going to take out, let's see. You know what? My cables are running. My cables that go to this front screen are running through that bottom slot, and I don't want to move them. So for now, this will be a temporary demonstration. I'll move this to the top slot where you would normally put a graphics card, which is way more bandwidth than we need. We don't need an X16 slot, but that's okay. Just a bit overkill. But since this is live and not prepared beforehand, I want you to see the entire preparation and thought process and installation, drivers, etc. So you know what to expect if you want to do this. So I'm just going to plug it in just like a video card. Same slot, line it up, push it in, and lock it down. And that's our installation. We're done. Okay? Now, when I turn this back on, we'll see if it automatically finds this and loads the driver or if it needs the driver provided to it. The good news is we still have our 2.5 gig wired connection, so we can always go onto the internet and download the driver from this machine to this machine, and then once the driver is installed, we can then unplug our Ethernet cable from the built-in one on the motherboard to the one we just added. DVD, CD drive, give me a break. All right, let's turn this back on. And let me go back to our input here. Now it should say no signal while it fires up. Oh, you know what? If you're paying close attention, you'll see I did not put power back into this machine. This is not wireless power. And if it was, I wouldn't want to be in between it. Can you imagine wireless power? Don't walk between these two parts. They're transmitting power. You get tased. All right, let's turn this back on again. I mean, I suppose they have wireless power. It's called batteries. All right, there we go. And now, let me switch back over to our input here, and we should get the post screen. Again, everything is live. Everything is happening exactly in real time as you see it. So far, this is normal. It'll take a second for the post screen to appear. I should probably put camera 1 on at the same time so you realize your connection hasn't dropped. All right, good. We're back at our desktop. Now, does it auto detect and load the driver for our new card or not? Let's go to our device manager. Under network adapters, Marvell AQ Action, I guess, 10 gig network adapter. Now that driver preloaded automatically. It might have done it through Windows updates with our other internet connection. So if I show you by going down here, our current internet connection speed should be 2.5 because the network adapter built onto the motherboard is a 2.5, and I've got it plugged into the back of the switch at 2.5. So under Ethernet, we'll scroll down. Link speed is 2500, that's 2.5. So now I'm going to unplug it. And now that little globe appeared down in the right. This hasn't refreshed. I don't know that we have to go back and redo it, but obviously our link speed is at 0. Now I'm going to plug this cable into our brand new 10 gig connector, right? Same cable. Now we're down in the new connector we just plugged in, and in just a moment, there it is. We'll right click, we'll go back to network and internet settings, back to Ethernet, scroll down, 2500. Now why does it say 2500? It says 2500 because we are plugged into the 2.5 plug on the back of our mesh. So the mesh in this case does have a 10 gig. And if I unplug from the back of the mesh, let me go to camera 1 so you can see what I'm doing. This is the latest Wi-Fi 7 mesh point. It's very expensive. And on the back of it, we have multiple connections. The 2 on top are 2.5. The 2 that we're not using below, those are both 10. So if I follow this cable, which I believe is the one I'm using here, yeah, this is the one. I'm going to unplug it from here. Sometimes those little snag-proof covers get underneath the plastic clip. It makes it difficult to pull these out. I'm going to plug it into one of the 2 black ports down below. And then we'll go back and see if this is reinitialized. So let me close that. That looks like it reinitialized. Network and internet. Ethernet. Oh. 10 gigs, baby. 10 gigs up, 10 gigs down. Woo-wee. It's bringing the primal ape man in me out. Oh. All right, now, what do you do with it? I mean, everything we're going to connect to through this router is going to run at 2.5 max, right? So that just proves that we've installed our network card correctly, and it will operate at 10 gig, and it automatically negotiated whatever highest speed was available to what it was physically plugged into. Got that? So when we were physically plugged into the 2.5, we got 2.5. When we're physically plugged into our 10 gig switch, we're going to get 10 gig along with anything else plugged into the 10 gig switch that also has a 10 gig adapter. Everything else will operate at whatever speeds they are or at the limitation of the switch or the router. Somewhere behind me I have our switch that I showed previously. Again, it's TP-Link. TP-Link has never sent us a product for review. And they've never sponsored us in any way, shape, or form. This was my freedom of choice of what I wanted to buy. If I was my customer and I needed this, what would I recommend? What would I support and be held accountable for? What would represent the quality of my work? For the best possible price, this is what I went with. There are cheaper brands from Asia that have a bunch of loud fans in them. They may not be as reliable. I need warranty, I need quiet. Supposedly, this is what I want. I've never used one before. I'm going off what I've read online with reviews and my previous personal experience with this particular brand. TP-Link is also the folks who make our Wi-Fi 7. Again, we purchased that using your contributions and your support so that we can remain fully independent. Now, if TP-Link did reach out to us and said, hey, would you be interested in testing? Yes. They didn't even have to finish the sentence. I like the company. I think they offer a great value. But we've always had to buy their stuff, and that's fine. Because when we reached out to them and they said no, we just bought it. And with your support, we're able to continue doing it. getting exciting. 10 gigs, man. Running out of room to throw stuff. My eye! All right, in the box, some documentation. It's a switch. It's like getting documentations for a lamp. Insert light bulb, plug in lamp, turn switch. Anyway. Switch. Where's the switches? This is a network switch. It's a computer switch. It's not a physical switch. We call it a switch because it switches. Finally, we have some rubber feet if you want to put this on a desk. You're afraid of scratching it up. This can also typically be wall mountable. Yeah, it's wall mountable. And sometimes they have ears, what they call ears, or metal brackets. This does not include that because it's not designed to go into a rack. So if the rack is this wide, how would you get something smaller to fit? You need these adapters. They're like L-shaped metal brackets. And some switches will have the brackets included in the box with screws. They call those ears. And then those ears fill the gap on each side so you can slide that in the rack and secure it with all your other rack mounted equipment. This is not rack mountable. It does not have any. I said it doesn't have ears. What? Power adapter. Just put that down there for now. All right, we're going to plug it in here. Actually, you know what? I'm going to plug it in down here first. Hopefully I have room to plug this in. Uh-oh. Oh, maybe. Maybe right at the end. It's a problem with these adapters when they're that long. It can be very difficult to get things to plug in side by side. And that's exactly what I've done here. So I'll just plug it directly into the wall. That's fine. That's fine. It's live, so we've got to keep the show moving. Normally I like to use a surge protector, but I have to rearrange the plugs, and in doing so I will take myself offline. So we're going to plug that in. That's all we've got is power. We've got a power light. We're going to take the plug from the back of this computer that's running to our router, our mesh point, plug it into any of these. It doesn't matter. You plug it in. This does have a little fan, but you can barely hear it. Cheaper brands are probably going to get louder. Okay, so right now we've got the mesh point plugged into our switch. Now the switch, oh, it's green, plugged in at 10 gig. The switch has 4 more ports that we can physically plug things in. This is not wireless in any way, but by plugging it into our wireless mesh, anything wireless talking to our router can also talk to anything physically plugged in. They can all communicate now. And they can, just like if you remember a telephone, remember a landline? You could have a corded, you know, remember the swirly coiled cord that you were tethered to? Or you could buy a wireless phone and you can walk around the house. The phone call was still the same phone call, it still sounded the same. There was nothing any different other than the subtraction of the wire. That's what wireless networking is, all right? So wireless and wired computers talk to each other without any consideration for how they're talking. Just like if somebody calls you, they don't care if you're on a landline or a cell phone. It sounds exactly, who cares? So it's irrelevant, just so you know. Now, because I've taken the cable that was running to this was plugged into that, right? So now that, our mesh point, is plugged into our switch, so we can talk to everything connected to our switch, wired or wireless, at whatever speeds they're at. But in order to do that, for this to talk, it has to be in the switch. For this to talk, it has to be in the switch. If we want to get 10 gig, then these two will talk at 10, and everything else in the building will talk at whatever their speed limit is. So I need another cable to run from here back over to here. Now, like I said, I went online and I bought some category 6A cables. 5E cables, you can make it work. It's real iffy and inconsistent. Just spend $2 and buy a new cable. So we're going to make sure we plug that into the 10 gig and not the 2.5 gig port back here. And then we'll just, again, any one of these plugs doesn't matter. Just like a surge protector, when you're plugging in your lamp and you're plugging in your battery charger, it doesn't matter which plug you use. It's the same thing. My OCD says we're going to go in order, so I'm going to go to the next one there. So now this is connected to this is connected to that. That white cylinder is connected to everything in the house, from cameras to computers and our other Synology, all of it. All right, so in theory now, this can see our entire network, but once we leave the switch and go to, see our network attached to our mesh, it's at the speed of those devices. This is not going to be our slow point. Now, we need to do the same for our new Synology 923 Plus. Right now, by default, it has two 1 gig ports. That's it. And sure, we can do what's called SMB3 multi-channel and get 2 gig out of it by running 2 cables into the switch. And we wouldn't need a 10 gig switch. We could just use a 2.5 gig switch. When you need 2.5 gig on your computer, or just running the 2 1 gigs isn't really going to benefit you much. So what we want to do is we want to upgrade to the 10 gig. And this is the coolest part of the new Synology line, is this option. And it's a $100 option, but still it's a $100, well, it's an $80 card. So you're kind of falling into the same price. If you look carefully back here, you'll see there's a little access door. And I guess the idea is you remove a couple screws, remove this access door. Inside of this box is something about that wide that slides in and locks in, and then that becomes the port. These ports over here still remain. We're just not going to use them. Just like the 2.5 gig port on the back of the motherboard is still here, and we can still use it, but instead I'm using the 10 gig card. Or when you're adding another video card, right? Say your motherboard has a video output, but you've added an NVIDIA card, and you want to plug your monitor into the video card, even though you can accidentally plug it into your motherboard and get a video signal. I wonder why your games are running so slowly, because you plugged it into the wrong one. So if you want to, you can disable it. We're not going to rip it off the board. Same thing here. We can disable these or we can just ignore these. But when we plug in, we want to plug into our new one. So if that's how it works, which is how I think it works, I've never done this before. I'm going to need my glasses so as I can see. There's Mark Leibowitz joining us. John Paul Bacon. This is Cat 6 versus Cat 7 versus Cat 8. Cat 7, you might as well just forget about Cat 7. That's a sloppy mess. Cat 8 is overkill for what we need. Cat 6 versus Cat 6A. Anything above Cat 6A shouldn't be in your house, in my opinion. But that's business stuff. But Wikipedia, the Category 7 cable, and you'll understand why Cat 7 should be avoided regardless. Skip over 7. Now, if you want to spend the money for 8 because you think you're future-proofing it, they're not that much more expensive. And they'll work. But you're overbuying, in my opinion. Because there's nothing on the horizon that will use that for consumers anytime soon. Maybe in a couple years. Maybe in like 2 years. All right, there's the little plastic door I've taken off, and that reveals a little tunnel right there. And then remove the shrink wrap from our network upgrade module. Look at how it's packed. Wow. Wow. It's super tiny. I thought it was as big as this box. I was trying to figure out how it's going to fit in that little hole. That explains it. Well, it seems like damage in shipping would be highly unlikely. The way they packed this, that's crazy. Got a little static bag here, anti-static bag. With some tape on it. Pretty funky looking connector that's proprietary, will only work with Synology and only on certain Synology models that it's compatible with. There aren't many, but hopefully there'll be more in the future. Let's just put that down there. Now this should only go in one way, so if I try to put it in the wrong way, it no worky. Turn it around the other way, and notice it's got a little heatsink on here. Isn't that cute? We just drop that bad boy in, should click, it does. And then we put the two screws back in that were covering this little door. And I guess we can put this little door away somewhere because we're done with that. Don't over tighten the screws, it's just there to lock it in position. It's not there to keep it air or water tight. And when you're done, it's gonna look just like that. And so we're not going to use these anymore. These are the ones. The silver one here, that is our 10. So to use that, we have to run a cable from here to here. And we have 3 more places. Lots of room. Come have a seat. So I need another cable. So I'll go down here and pick up another one of my brand new 6A thin Ethernet cables. You should see the floor when I'm done. And we're going to plug that into our silver port right there. And then literally any plug available on the switch. Again, my OCD says we're going to keep them together. It doesn't make it any faster, but there you go. With that done, we can turn on the Synology, fire it up, and run our testing. So we're getting to the beans. Let's plug in power, which only goes in one way. Which way is it? It's that way. Okay, getting our power plugged in, like so. Then I have to give this power, which, will it reach? Okay. Normally all this would go up on a shelf somewhere. You wouldn't be standing all around the wires like I am. But for this to reach, I need to uncoil this. All right, so I can get it closer to my power cable. It's alive! Well, not yet. I really don't want to stress on that. I don't want to put a lot of pressure on this. I'll try and maybe leave that on the desk. I am quickly running out of room. Now somewhere there's a power button right there. And we're going to give this a minute to boot up and initialize just as you would any other computer. This is a little computer running its own little operating system. And I think we have it already configured and ready to run. I think we did that in previous videos. Richard Palmentier said he's using Cat 6E. There's no such thing as 6E. You have a 6, a 6A, a 5, or a 5E. There is no 6E, to the best of my knowledge. Dude the Tech with a $1.99 super chat. Right on. Thank you, Dude the Tech. David Graham with $2 says your floor is our barefoot nightmare. That's true. Luke Greeny wants me to check my phone. Hey, you know what? That's what we can do while we're waiting. Let me check it. I gotta find the, there it is. $50 super chat from Luke Greenius says, thank you, Carey and Mara. I wish it was more. Right on. Well, thank you for that. I also heard from our friend Anthony Remus over at Remus Computer Solutions in Las Vegas. And he's been, you know, he builds these pretty high-end machines for people that need like CAD workstations. That just beeped. I think that means our, whatever we put in the microwave is done. No, that should mean it's initialized and ready to rock. So at that point, we're going to switch back over to here. I don't think I need my glasses for this. So let's switch back over to that desktop here. Very good. And now I have to grab a different mouse. So let me do that. Okay. When we go to this PC, did I map a drive? No, I didn't. Let's go to the network. Let's see what's on our network. There's our BE95 router. There's our Synology 418. And what is called server should be our brand new 923 Plus. If I double click it, it should be, I think it's empty, public, new folder, stuff. I might have copied stuff over to it already, so I'm not worried about that. What we want to do is copy stuff now. This definitely was done at the 1 gig speeds, whatever these are. Probably some testing we were doing just over the network. We had some network dropouts that we thought maybe our previous Wi-Fi system was the problem. Anyway, I didn't clean it up. So let's do this. Let's map a drive letter. How are you going to map a drive letter, Carey? We're going to go this PC, map network drive. We'll call it drive letter Z. We're going to browse. Once again, we should find it here. We could type it in manually, but I prefer to browse for it. Now the browse could take a minute while it sort of looks through your network and says, what the heck is going on over here? We'll give that a moment. Server is what I want to browse to, and public, perfect. Okay, I want it to reconnect it, log in. And there's no password required to get in. So it works and acts as though it is physically plugged in as a big drive, like a 20 terabyte drive inside of that Johnsbow computer, but it's on the network. And all I'll do is click on that. See? I can go to my Windows Explorer, go to this PC, and look, there it is. Now let me move that over here for a second. As a reminder, in this test folder, we have very large files. They typically transferred prior to this at about 110 megabytes per second. So if I right-click on this test folder and go to Properties, you're going to see it's 659 gigs of data in just 6 files. Those are some giant files. So I'm going to right-click, I'm going to choose Copy. Where's my copy? Right here, I forgot. Windows 11 just gives me the symbol. And go over here, and I'll hit Paste. And let's take a look at what speeds we get over here. Now we should get up to 1,000 if everything is capable of going 1,000. Mike's unboxing and reviews predicted between 500 and 600. So far, he is correct, but give it a minute. What took over an hour and a half now will take 20 minutes, right? Just with what we've done here. So I could do this 5 more times, 6 more times. No, 20, 40, 60. Yeah, I could do this 5 more times in the span of time it took me to do it once at a 1 gig connection. Now, this number can climb. It is capable of getting to 1,000 or very close to 1,000 in a perfect world. We'd have to grab the TerraMaster NVMe SSD and run the same test, using everything the same, only changing from the mechanical drives to the SSDs, or changing to a bigger NAS at 10 gig that has like 7 hard drives. You'll see the speed will drop, that's normal. And of course, depending on the size of the file, you're going to see a different performance level. Now, if we look in the test, have we even finished one of these yet? Because the other thing I want to express is the read speeds. Now, typically on a hard drive based network attached storage, read and write should be about the same speed. On an SSD based NAS device, the writes will typically be slower than reading it back will be significantly faster. So if this was the TerraMaster NVMe NAS that we reviewed yesterday, our write speeds would probably be about this. But then when we read it back, then we'd be getting close to 1,000 because of the way SSDs work. That being said, with mechanical drives, it should be pretty steady across the board. Now, there is something called jumbo frames, and we can enable jumbo frames in order to boost our speed, but it's not going to make our hard drives any faster. So at this point, if we would have just gone to 5 gig, we'd see slightly more than what a 5 gig connection would give us. But they don't make any 5 gig switches, and Synology doesn't offer a 5 gig network adapter. So I don't know what 5 gig is for. In fact, if you search on Amazon for a 5 gig network adapter, like a PCIe network card, I think you'll find 2 out of the millions of products Amazon sells. And if you look for a 5 gig network switch, they don't exist. You have to buy a 10 gig and have it auto-negotiate. Now, I'm just waiting for one of these files to finish. They are large files, and as you can see, if you're doing the kind of work I'm doing and I need to edit this file, I need to get the file onto the editing machine. And what I would do before is just copy it to a flash drive. Depending on the speed of the flash drive, it may copy the same speed to a flash drive, and then walk it over to the computer, copy it back to the computer I want to edit on, edit, render it, then bring the rendered file back over to the streamer so I can upload it. But with the configuration is that we have here today, I can now do all of this over the network, which is really convenient. And even if the computer I'm editing on is upstairs and it's wireless and it only get me 30 megabytes a second, it's going to take way longer for me to copy the file, but I can set it to copy and go do something else. But if I'm in the office with the Synology NAS, I'm going to get these faster speeds. So just for the sake of experimentation, what I want to do is, this time remaining is pretty accurate. We're going to cancel this copy. This one should now be complete. Let's just copy it back and see if if our writing and our reading speed are similar. So we'll just paste it right onto the desktop. Let's see what it does. You can see initially, and even now, our read speed is quite a bit faster. We are hitting 700. That's interesting. Usually on a hard drive, a mechanical hard drive, your read and write speeds will be similar. But for whatever reason, the reads are significantly faster. As we're hitting and touching 730, we're getting closer and closer to that 1,000. And I estimated if we're getting an average of 200 from each drive, and we have 4 drives, that means a theoretical maximum of 800, and we are getting closer and closer to 800. Now, if you're moving a bunch of small files, that's a different thing altogether. So depending on if you're reading or you're writing, there is a difference, whether it's SSD or mechanical drive. That's very surprising to me. Look at those numbers. I'm pretty happy with that. That's impressive. If I want to get 200 more megabytes per second, I guess I need a NAS with 5 drives. I think that's our bottleneck. We're maximizing how much throughput the mechanical drives inside of the NAS have. But you notice it was very easy to set up. We didn't have to configure anything. As long as you're using the right parts. We've got the switch, we've got the 6A network cables. We're flying. And again, if I go upstairs and pull up the Wi-Fi on the laptop and I want to copy the same file, then the speed's probably going to be 30 or 40 megabytes a second, and the time it's going to take is going to be much longer. But everybody on the network has access, and depending on what speed they are and how they're connected, will determine what speed they get. It's that simple. Yeah, we're doing really good on that. Really good. I'm happy with that. So let me go back to, go over to the chat room here with camera 1, and let's see what your responses and reactions and questions are. So Nick Caffrey says there is a Category 6E cable with grounded foil shielding. Well, they're certainly not going to be the thin ones, I'll tell you that. Interesting. All right. So there is a 6E. First I've heard of it. The E stands for edible. Mike Leibowitz says it's like insulated cable. Yeah, the foil wrapping. David Graham said his file transfers are only 48 megabytes per second. Yeah, we're nearly 20 times that. Hey, there's Mitch Morrison joining us in the chat room. Welcome in, Mitch. Mitch wants to know, why did Mozart rush to the bathroom? It was to conduct his next movement. Happy Friday. Thank you, Mitch. Thank you for the dad joke. Paul Gray says this was an amazingly fast setup. Yeah, it's pretty simple and straightforward. Now, if we're going to use the SFP ports, it's a little hit or miss. If you have the option of using an SFP, I recommend you don't use it. If you're in an enterprise corporate environment, that's a different story. The fact that they're putting SFP plus, it's called an SFP plus, I keep calling it SFP. Those are two different things. Regardless, the plug is the same, it's just what it's capable of. An SFP is just a 1 gig, SFP plus is 10. Anyway, those plugs get really, really hot. I don't know why they would put an SFP plug on a consumer router. It's just dumb. So Ethernet's the way to go. It's just a cheaper cable. It's easier to set up. It doesn't get anywhere near as hot. The switch is barely warm. So I think I made the right decision on the switch. With the 2 additional ports, I can plug any network device into these ports. It doesn't matter what speed it is. The switch will auto-negotiate to whatever. If I take my laptop and I plug it into my laptop, and my laptop is a gigabit, then that will run at a gigabit right there, right? So when it talks to any of these or anything on the mesh, it communicates at 1 gigabit through here. That's its own choke point. But this negotiates, so each one is independent. This could be 10, this could be 5, this could be 2.5, this could be 1, it could be a mixture, it doesn't matter. The switch auto-negotiates all of that, and what's 10 runs at 10, and what's 2.5 runs at 2.5. It's very simple, auto-negotiation, a wonderful thing. I'm just looking in the chat to see if I missed any questions. If I haven't seen your question, that's why I haven't addressed it. Just repost it again in the chat while I'm looking, like right now, and I'll do my best to provide an answer. I think one of the things we take away from this experience and this demonstration is we can only go as fast as 10 gig when we're plugging in a 10 gig network cable, which means if your cables can't handle 10 gig, there's your choke point. If your computer's wireless, there's your choke point. If your switch is not 10 gig, there's your choke point. If your router, if you don't have a switch, you're plugging directly in the router. This modern router has 10 gig, as do the other TP-Link routers we reviewed that are Wi-Fi 7. You will often find the option of the higher end Wi-Fi 7 routers have 10 gig ports on them, and you can use that. You don't have to buy the switch. Depending on how many things you want 10 gig, they must be wired with the right wire. Even when they're wired with the right wire, the device itself has to be able to keep up. In order to hit 10 gigs, we need to be able to have a computer with a fast enough internal drive to capture and send 1,000 megabytes per second. That means no SATA drives, no hard drives. And for the Synology to deliver 1,000, it's going to need more than 4 hard drives because, well, the card is capable of 10 gig, and the cable is capable of 10 gig, and the switch is capable of 10 gig. The drives themselves are only about 200 gig possible, approximately, throughput through each one. Times 4, that's 800 megabytes. That's 200 megabytes shy of hitting 1,000. So you probably, I don't know if 5 or 6 drives will do it, or you need to go NVMe if you want to absolutely hit that 1,000. The goal of 10 gig isn't necessarily to hit the 1,000. The goal of 10 gig, in my opinion, is to go faster than 2.5. Forget 5, you can forget it. So if 2.5 is going to move my data at around 250, 260 megabytes per second, and with 10 gig, I'm moving it through mechanical drives at 750 on the reads, that's 3 times faster. That means if something's going to take an hour, it's only going to take 20 minutes. If you're moving a lot of data and that's worth it to you, there you go. You saw the pricing on the stuff. The cables are cheap. The network cards, it's a bit more expensive, sure. Regular 2.5 gig network card might be 20, 30 bucks. The 10 gig card, this is 100 for the Synology, 80 for the one we used here. The switch, as I mentioned, a bit more expensive than a 5-port 2.5 gig. So for home users, this is sort of just becoming a thing, right? If you're running 1 gig now on your computer, as most people are, and your internet service provider says, hey, we want you to know we have a 2 gig internet connection available in your area if you'd like to upgrade. And you think, wow, I can get my internet faster. Forget all this stuff. We're just talking about something completely different, but you'll see where it ties in. So you call your internet provider, you say, I'd like to pay an upgrade to 2 gig. That sounds amazing. So the internet provider likely replaces your modem. And the modem's probably going to be a router modem built in, at least it is here with Cox Communications. And then you're going to plug that bad boy into your computer, which only has 1 gig, and you're going to say, why did Cox tell me they sold me twice the speed? I'm running a speed test. It's the same speed. Well, because your computer doesn't have a 2.5 gig network connection. Oh. Or if your computer is on Wi-Fi. If you don't upgrade your Wi-Fi, so the Cox cable modem router will have upgraded Wi-Fi, but they're not upgrading the Wi-Fi in your laptop. They're not upgrading the Wi-Fi in your desktop. They're not upgrading the Wi-Fi in your Fire Stick, right? So now you've got all of this bandwidth right there in this box, and you have no way to take advantage of it in all the other boxes you're connecting it to. So unless your computer's relatively new and has a 2.5 gig network port already built into it, you will need to go online and either buy one of these dongles and plug it into one of your USB ports, and then you don't have to do you don't need any tools. Just plug it in, unplug your connection, and plug it right in. And now you can take advantage of that higher speed internet that you're paying for. By the way, you're going to pay for it regardless. They don't care if you're only using half of it. You want to pay twice as much and only use half, they're happy to take your money. And they will not assist you in getting that up and running because that's your stuff. They didn't sell it to you. That's not what they do. It's up to you to figure this stuff out. And all your Wi-Fi stuff, probably it's all going to run at the same speed unless you upgrade the Wi-Fi, which again can be a USB Wi-Fi adapter you plug in to boost your speeds that way. So you're going to spend money. Is that my, let me see that. This just arrived apparently. Thank you, Mara.
You're welcome.
This right here is that Wavelength 5 gig Driver download. Looks like a little disc. These are the links to access the drivers. So this is that $36 5 gig. Yeah, this just came in the mail. USB dongle. From Wavelink, you've got your Ethernet port here, USB-C only. What happens if we plug this in? We already know this. Let's test it. Do I have USB-C back here? Oh no. Oh yeah, I do have one. All right, let's plug in our USB-C adapter back here. Let's switch back over to this. And let's see, go full screen. Let's close that for a minute. Okay, so right now we're connected. $10 gig. I'm going to unplug from our 10 gig card, and now I'm going to plug into this Wavelink card. I don't see any issues with it finding a driver. So you notice the little globe in the right corner that tells us we're disconnected. Now we're reconnected. Right click, go back to network and internet settings, Ethernet. Oh, we're only at 2500 with this. Wasn't this supposed to be 5? I thought this would be 5. Why am I only at 2.5? I should probably read the box. Maybe I need the drivers. It seems to have loaded a driver all by itself. Let's go to the device manager. Under network adapters, we've got our Wi-Fi that's built on the motherboard. It's Wi-Fi 6. We've got our Marvell 10 gig, and now we've got this Realtek USB. That's us right there. Advanced, speed and duplex. See, it goes to 5. So we're on auto negotiation. If we force 5, it may not connect. Why isn't it connect? I'm going to tell it to go to 5 and see what it does. So you see the globe? Will it negotiate at 5? I don't think it will, because if it could, oh, you know what? I think it did. Network and internet settings. Ethernet. Speed. No, it's still at 2.5. Oh, so just kidding. Realtek USB. I mean, it's very generic, right? Double click, driver. So the driver, 11.1, there's probably a newer driver. We're going to go ahead and just leave this on auto negotiation. And let me get my glasses and see what this little piece of paper says about the drivers. Maybe it's a driver issue, or maybe it's a limit to my USB port. Okay, directions. www.wavelink.com/driver. That seems pretty straightforward. All right, let's do that. www.wavelink.com/driver. What can I do for you? I need some drivers. Oh, I see. No. Featured products. Please search by device. Okay. So wireless, no. PCIe, no, it's not one of these. USB network card, that's what it is. I gotta figure out what model number it is. It is, I'm sure it's somewhere on the box. WLNWT, no, NWU 340GA. 332, 340GA. Is G and GA the same? 340GD, 320, 327, 303, 328, 332, 332, 329, 327. Okay, I mean, maybe. Might all use the same driver anyway. 24, download for Windows. 40 megs. Shouldn't be taking this long. That's got to be on their servers, not on our site's fast. That's on them. That is their servers running that slowly. That's terrible. Oh, and here it's calling it a GA, which is what we needed. And on the other page, it just called it a G. So that's interesting. We do have the right driver. All right, we're going to let that download. And in the meantime, let me just jump back over to camera 1. There we go. Gregory Howard with a $10 super chat says, hey, I made it. Here's my late fee. Hello, Carey, Mara, and all in chat. Welcome in, Gregory. Good to see you. Thank you so much for your continued support, your generosity, and your friendship. We really appreciate you. Lawn Dog says, oh, CareyHolzman, it looks like you got a new gizmo for me to get. That USB-C 5 gig adapter. I'm not selling them. I'm just saying, hey, did you know these exist? And by the way, look how cheap it is. I do have a 10 gig USB adapter that goes to Thunderbolt 4. They're not available on Amazon yet. They are available on AliExpress. So for about $118, I think is what I spent, I'm going to get one of them giant USB adapters that I was showing you on Amazon that are all Thunderbolt 3. And this one, when it arrives sometime next month, will be USB 4 / Thunderbolt 4. If you ever see Thunderbolt 4, it should also be USB 4 compatible. And then we can test it. But it'll be massive. And if it's something you use all the time, it's probably going to get super, super hot. So right now, you can get those 10 gig speeds, assuming your computer has USB 4. Otherwise, there's no point in using this adapter and spending that kind of money when you can spend a third as much and just go half speed. Assuming your USB can even keep up with this. All right? Which could be our problem over here. I don't know yet. This is an 11th gen Intel unit, so we're not running the latest and greatest. And that may be a part of the issue. I don't know yet. Sometimes the fastest USB-C on a computer is the one up front. Does this one have one up front? It does. I don't want to move it because we're plugged in and downloading at a very slow speed. And again, that slow speed is them. It's not us. We can't. We're behind a slow car. There's no way to pass. Just have to be patient. They'll eventually move or another lane will open. Just relax. Don't road rage. Don't internet rage. Deep breaths. While we talk about deep breaths, Mara and I have found a channel that apparently millions of people have found. And for those of us in tech, especially those of us in tech, there are some health concerns for people that work in this very high pressure position, right? If you're a content creator, you're being scrutinized by the world, right? In the comments section, people can be very mean. Even in chat, we seem to have gotten rid of the mean people. We have a great chat room now. But boy, in the beginning, it was tough. And that can take a mental toll on anybody over time. Some people can be affected by it immediately. Some people brush it off, but after a while, it'll wear you down. And so the mental health of people in IT is a thing. There's even a podcast about mental health in IT and what IT workers can do to try to keep themselves mentally fit. And if you're interested in that, I can't remember the name of it, but it's a podcast and it's pretty interesting. But the reason I mention it is Mara and I stumbled on this YouTube channel. Let me see if I can find it over here. Let's switch back over to this unit, and I'll see if I can share it with you. But it's yeah, we'll let that continue to download, and while that's downloading, we'll do something else. Multitask. We're going to open a new tab, and we're going to go to YouTube. And there is a homestead. You know what homesteading is? People that live off the grid, they live off the land. And this homestead is in Azerbaijan, by Russia, Azerbaijan. And so you might already know what I'm talking about. Wrong keyboard, Carey. Give me a second. 1 second. Got to use the right keyboard. And I think it's called I don't know. I'm going to put farm. I'm going to just try and find it. This one right here. Canned Hayati. 5.4 million views. They don't even talk in the video. Oh, we got to watch an ad. I wonder if they'll copyright strike me for an ad. I don't think so. So this is just beautiful. These are people that just live off the land. They don't really even talk in the video. And they grow their own food. They prep their meal. And they just have birds and chickens and cats and dogs all walking around. It's very peaceful. It's very quiet. It's very green. And for your mental health, just to sit and watch one of these videos, it's very calming and inspirational to remember what life was like when you could take your time to do something. Now it's always rush, rush, rush. And I have to tell you, the amount of pride that I have in the work that I do becomes challenged oftentimes on the internet by someone who says I do it too slowly. Well, if you watch this channel, they're doing everything at whatever speed they want to do it. They're not under any clock. There's no boss. The amount of time they take affects what they're going to eat and how long they can preserve it before it goes bad. They put a lot of work into it. The cinematography is beautiful. They must have a professional cinematographer. They're very private people, it's my understanding. And it is just an incredible series of videos to watch, along with recipes, by the way, that they show. These classic, more or less tribal recipes that are handed down. And the way they make things, typically without machinery, it's typically done by hand and typically done with ingredients grown on the farm, including meat, right? So they have cows, they have chickens, they have rabbits. They're not eating the cats or the dogs. Don't worry about that. And yeah, it's late at night. You want to calm your mind. Put that video on and watch it and tell me that you're not drawn to that. It is great for your mental health. At least it is for mine. How are we doing on our download? We're still working on this. Halfway there. All right, so while that continues on, we'll go back to camera one. But I have to tell you, they have a lot of videos, millions of subscribers. And that's the way life used to be for me. When I would get a computer on the bench, if I'm building my own computer, I take my sweet time because I enjoy it. But when you do it as a business, it kind of takes that out of it. Right now, it's like, get it done quick. You put a video up. I could have done it faster. And if you get caught up in that, and now you want to work very quickly, or your boss says you got to get all this done, go, go, go. Let's go, 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 go. On the homestead, you wake up in the morning and you decide, do I want to do some weeding? Do I need to feed the chickens? Do I need to collect the eggs? Do I need to start collecting some of the vegetables, see what's ripe, see what I can pull, determine what I can make for dinner today? All the typical stuff that you would do to maintain, to be able to eat without anybody telling you, do it all now. You decide. There's, I don't know if they must have electricity out there, but at the same time, when it gets dark out on the farm, they can't see anything. So if you start too late in the day, you may not get done everything you wanted to get done. but nobody's, the sun goes down when the sun goes down. So that kind of life, that more relaxed, quiet, peaceful, go at your own pace because you want to and because you like it. You're enjoying it. When you see these people on their homestead, they don't look angry at all. And when you listen, you just hear birds and the wind blowing through the trees, maybe a fly buzzing by. You look in the sky, there's no planes or helicopters. It's very quiet. And they work together. And if you can allow that to sort of, if you can absorb that, especially before going to bed, put that on. It's very calming. Little tip from your Uncle Carey, if you're feeling stressed out. Mitch wants to know, what is the best 2.5 gig PCIe network card? I want to buy one. All right, so if you want to plug in a 2.5 gig network card into your computer, they do sell them on Amazon. As to which is the best one, I don't know. I would look at price and reviews. So let's give an example, and let's pick one right now, and I'll show you how I harvest network cards on my digital homestead. Let's go back over here to, let's go to this computer. And again, while it's downloading, we can go over to Amazon. Just switch this to Amazon. Wrong keyboard again, Amazon. Okay. Amazon. And we want to search Amazon for 2.5. Again, I'm using the wrong keyboard. 2.5 GBE network interface card. And we want it to be PCIe. All right, that's what we want. So in our search results, we're going to see a ton, I'm sure. It's a pretty common thing. So right up here, Nick Giga. Now, I've had a very good experience with Nick Giga, even though you might not have heard of them. 20 bucks. I would not hesitate to buy that. I don't know what the difference is between the red one and the black one. There's a penny difference, and you get 10% off. That'll be about $2 off of that if you apply the coupon. Both of those are excellent choices. Now, of course, you know I like TP-Link. Now, if you want the name brand TP-Link card, which looks a little more robust, I would probably, I don't know. It's a tough call. You could spend the extra, well, this will be 27 and this will be 18 after the coupon. So maybe $9 more to get the name brand that you're familiar with. Take a look at the reviews. We have 997 reviews, averaging 4.5 stars. We have 290 reviews, averaging only 4 stars. And we have 509 reviews, averaging 4.5 stars. This one almost matches the TP-Link in reviews, except the TP-Link has nearly twice as many reviews. As we continue to scroll down, we will see other, like this doesn't even have a manufacturer's name on it. This is another one that doesn't have a manufacturer's name on it, that has 2 network cards if you wanted to use it like as a firewall. And we've got another one with no name. Another one with no name. Bros Trend. I don't know what Bros Trend is. That sure does look a lot like the TP-Link. I wouldn't buy it. This is another dual card, don't need it. There's another one with no name. Here's TrendNet. I haven't used TrendNet in a while, but they're a major name. Another one with no name using an Intel i226V. That may be worth more to some people if you want the Intel chip versus the Realtek, if you're running Linux or a different operating system that won't have support, perhaps driver support. Here is a 10 gig for $175. We're back to the NIC Giga again. That's probably sponsored. No, it's not sponsored. It must have been sponsored at the top. Yeah, that's why it's up at the top. It's sponsored. And that one was sponsored. And then you see the regular catalog item that's not sponsored. So they're shoving that in your face multiple times. So overall, honestly, Mitch, I would probably pick... That's a tough call. I mean, I'd be very comfortable with the TP-Link, but I'd also be pretty comfortable with these NIC Gigas. It's your choice. Any of these top three. I do think if you don't want to mess around and experiment, spend the extra $9. You know this is going to work fine. If you want to save $9, it means that much to you. Buy one of the NIC Gigas. It'll probably be just fine. Probably. I don't know what kind of support you're going to get if you need it, though. TP-Link has support. I don't. NIC Giga, I think, is in Asia. So when you email them, it's probably going to be 24 hours before you get a response, and it may be in broken English. Whereas TP-Link, you're going to have, it's more American-based. So you're going to pay a little bit more for that. You probably won't need it in either case. But the chances of you needing it are higher with the off-brand than with the name brand. So if it's worth the extra $9, get the name brand. If you want to save the $9, you're probably fine with NIC Giga. I've used NIC Giga stuff. I don't have any complaints with it. And if I did, I'm not exactly sure how I would get any problems resolved. So there you go. Hopefully that answers your question. Did our download finish? It did. Let's open our download and extract it. And let's see what's in here. Windows 7, Windows 10, Windows 11, Windows Vista, Windows 8. That is just dumb. Okay, Windows 11. Install USB. That's what I want. Double click. You run it. Yes. Okay. Next. Install. I expect to see that little screen turn to a globe when it disconnects to put the driver in. Here we go. Installing the driver. Oh, there it goes. Just went to a globe. That means we've taken the tires off the car. We can't drive the car while the tire's off. Puts the tire back on. It reconnects. Very good. Not sure why it's doing it twice, but maybe there's more to it. We'll patiently wait for that to finish. Okay. In theory, click finish. Close these windows out. Go down here, network and internet settings, Ethernet. Hey, look at that. All we did is change the driver. There's our 5,000. We got it. That was the problem. We needed the driver. Good to know. All right, now we go back to our test folder. Let's go back to the Synology. And let's go back to the test folder and right-click, copy, right-click, paste, and it'll just overwrite it. Replace it. Let's see what our speeds are. We were getting, what, 750 out of the 10 gig port? That's not bad. About 200 megabytes less. And $100 less on the price of the network card. Well, no, it's not. The internal 10 gig card was $80, and this 5 gig USB card is $30, $36. So value for the money, bang for the buck, 5 gig is the way to go. But 2.5 is even cheaper, but 2.5 is going to go half that speed, just so you know. You're looking at 564, you see how many minutes it's going to take to complete, right? So if I cancel this, close that out, just let it cancel. And now I'm going to grab a different USB adapter. All right, check this out. I've got a couple of these down here. Let's see. This one I think is 1 gig. I'm not sure. Let's plug it in. Now, just to not confuse myself, I'm going to unplug the Wavelength 5 gig adapter. And it doesn't say 5G on it anywhere. So I'm going to get a marker. I'm going to write 5G because I can't tell these apart. Unless I know, oh, the Wavelength one is the fast one. You can kind of tell if it's USB type A. It's not going to be any more than 2.5. I think this is a 1 gig. I don't know. Let's plug it in and see what it is. And again, I should get a marker now and start writing down what these are so I don't have to keep guessing. All right, we'll plug it into one of the blue USB ports. And we're going to go back over to camera 2. And you'll see that it just became a little computer down there on the right. That's the spot you want to be watching when I'm changing the network card. You want to watch that become a globe. Right-click, Network and Internet Settings, Ethernet, scroll down. What is our speed? 1 gig. Okay, that's a standard. That's what most of you have. Let me go back. Remember, everything else is at 10 gig, right? So I'm going to go back to the Synology, back to the test folder, right-click, copy. Same thing, right-click, paste. We're going to put it right back on the desktop. We were at 750 before, then we went to 550 with the 5 gig. Now at 1 gig, we're only moving 113 megabytes per second. That's about the most you're going to see. And that's because the bottleneck is that USB adapter. So it's going to take about 15 minutes to copy that one file from the Synology to the computer. So the computer can move data at 3,600 megabytes per second on its internal SSD. The NAS can move data up to, it appears, 800 megabytes per second. And our USB adapter can only move the data at 100 megabytes per second. Okay, so let's cancel that. Just for fun, let's go back over to camera 2, or I'm sorry, we'll go back over to camera 1. We're going to disconnect this one. No, that was my display port. Whoopsie, hold on. That'll come back on. Let's go to unplug. This is our 1 gig. I swear I just need to start labeling these. I'll just put a number 1 on it. That's all I need to know. 1 GBE. Nobody's going to be able to read that but me and my chicken scratch. This is a 5. So I'll write 5 GBE. Gigabit Ethernet. That's what GBE means. Okay, so now I got those two labeled. This one here, this is a Type C. This is made by Ugreen as well. Let's plug this one in. Doesn't matter what order you plug it in. Just figure it's easier to plug it in now. And then into the USB-C port back here. There we go. Some of these may require drivers. I have no idea. So we're going to go back over to camera 2, well, this one here, back to the desktop. It's already got the globe right there, so, or not the globe. The globe has already gone away is what I'm trying to say. I got to make the screen bigger for me. Okay, now I can see it. Right click, property, or network and internet settings, Ethernet, scroll down. This is also 1 gig. Why would that be 1 gig? Oh, you know what? They do sell these as both Type A and Type C in 1 gig and in 2.5 gig. So this apparently is a 1 gig. Okay, good to know. Close that out. Back over to the main camera. unplug, marker, 1 GBE. Okay, I have some more down here. I have to get down on my knees and find it. Okay, here's another one. Here's another one. I have 2 more yet to label. This one is 2.5 in type A, and this one is 2.5 in type C. So when a customer brings something in, or I'm working on something, let's say I don't have the network card driver, some brand new, 800 series motherboard or whatever. How do I get the driver? I can plug one of these in. I have my choice. That's why I have them. They're both going to run at the same speed regardless. I'm going to use the type A. We're going to plug that in. Hopefully it doesn't require a driver. This time I'm going to switch to the desktop, and you can watch as I plug it in. You'll see that little globe become a screen. So we'll show it to you this time. Okay, so there's a little globe down here in the bottom right corner telling us we have no internet connection. I'm going to plug this into the USB port back here that is blue, one of the blue ones. Give that a second to identify and load the driver. And you see that globe turn into a screen here in just a moment. Just did it. Now when I check, right-click, network and internet settings, Ethernet, scroll down, our connection speed is now 2500. Perfect. So at 2.5 gig, if I want to copy, once again, we'll go back to the NAS. We're going to copy this. Go right here to copy. Close that. Right-click anywhere on the desktop to paste it. Let's see how fast. Was it 113 before? Now we're at in the 280s, and now it's only going to take 6 minutes compared to the 20 minutes going from 1 to 2.5. Then from 2.5 to 5, you saw we were at 500 or 600. And then from 5 to 10, at least on the Synology, our choke point are the drives themselves, maxing out about 800. And there's your difference. So your bang for the buck is probably 2.5. There are no 5 gig switches or routers, so you have to get a 10 gig and it'll auto negotiate down to half speed in order to use 5. 5 is much cheaper though, but 5 costs more than 2.5, but it runs nearly twice as fast. So if you look at, we're running 110 or something at 1, we're running 283 on 2.5, 2.5 times 1. You're actually seeing it. We were running a little over 550. Again, take 283 and double it. And then if we take that 550 and double it, go from 5 to 10, we should be getting about 1,000 if everything is capable of operating at that speed. And as we go faster, the price goes up. So there we go. I don't need to let this finish. The reason for the demonstration is to show you that, first of all, this doesn't make our internet any faster, all right? You have to be able to have a network adapter as fast as your internet. So if most people don't have a gig internet in the United States, some of us have something called multi-gig, which is more than 1. So if you have more than 1, if you have a 2 gig, 2.5 gig, that's consumer-based, that's offered in Phoenix. Very few consumers have that option, and if you do, you need to make sure your computer can input a cable at 2.5 gig. Otherwise, you won't see any benefit to having that faster internet connection. Won't make any sense. None of your Wi-Fi devices are going to run any faster unless you have the latest, Dell XPS or some brand new laptop with Wi-Fi 6E or 7 running Windows 11. Wi-Fi 6E or 7 will not run on Windows 10. The 6 gigahertz band is not legal in some countries, so Windows 10 doesn't do good in identifying where it is. Windows 11 is much better and can say, okay, you are definitely in a country where this is allowed, or you are in a country where this is not allowed. And therefore, Wi-Fi 6E and Wi-Fi 7 on that 6 gigahertz band or 6 gigahertz channel, it's a band, 6 gigahertz band, will be restricted in certain parts of the world. And therefore, it requires Windows 11 for that reason. Okay, so go back and see if there's any questions. We're just a little over our 2-hour time I like to keep it at, but I do want to make sure I stick around long enough to make sure I've clarified anything that might be unclear to any of you. So if you have any questions, please ask them now in the chat room, and I will look and see what I've been missing. Gregory Howard says, by the way, the coffee pot computer he purchased from us, it works great. Thank you, Carey. Thanks for the update, Gregory. I'd love to hear that. Mara said she'd give up her soul to live there in Azerbaijan where they filmed that homesteading. It's very calming, very peaceful, very quiet. It's not go, 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 go. Let's go, let's go, let's go. I guess I'm getting older, but I don't have the energy to keep up anymore. Just slow down, take your time, put some care into it like a proper meal. You know, when I had to replace the power supply in this, I slowed down. I took out my mechanical screwdriver. I didn't use any mechanical tools. I did it all by hand. Carefully threaded the cables so nothing intertwined. Carefully took off the cover in the side so I could get to it, take the old one out, orient the new one in the same position. Calmly, late at night, 2 o'clock in the morning. It's very peaceful, it's very quiet. Nobody's looking at me, nobody's scrutinizing me. And I just take my time. It's sort of like when you watch them make bread in that homesteading video. She's using her hands. No tools, just her hands to blend the ingredients and fold it and give it all the right consistency. Or you can go to the store and buy some bread that was made in a machine and every loaf is exactly the same. That's fine if that's what you want. You want processed foods. And I can go either way. Like, you know, you can have a Twinkie or you can make your own homemade sponge cake and whipped cream. That being said, I found replacing this power supply in that very calm state of mind where it's more artisan work than mechanical work was more enjoyable for me. And I think the quality of my work is better. I wasn't rushed. Take my time, route the cables, clean up the cabling. I grabbed a couple of wire ties just to wrap the HDMI or the display. It's an HDMI cable and a USB cable that powers this screen. You see I kind of temporarily used a wire tie to keep them together so that I knew when I was going to plug this card in later today, I didn't want to get in between all these wires. So very calmly just wrapped the wire very slowly, made it look good. I was very inspired by the homesteading videos to be more artisan work than this go as fast as you can. Do the best you can as fast as you can. I'd rather do the best I can at my own speed and not have anybody looking over my shoulder. Just leave me alone. Don't talk to me. Let me just do this. The phone's not ringing. There's no distractions. Nobody's knocking on the door. It's late at night. We're not getting any Amazon packages. There's no door-to-door salesman. The phone's not ringing. Traffic is quiet. The neighborhood's all asleep. Nobody's playing a stereo. Oh, that's my best work. Take my time. I'm very proud of the work I did on this, and I've got more work to go, right? But that was just in changing the power supply out and hooking up the screen because that was not hooked up. And I was debating, should I do it? It's 2 o'clock in the morning. I thought, you know what? Let's do that. Let's get it hooked up. So instead of trying to rush it through, and again, when you see those comments on YouTube, I could have done that quicker. Carey takes too long. This is a lesson. This is a classroom. You go tell your teacher, your class needs to be shorter. You took too long to teach me math. What? People want to see commercials. These people that leave comments, they want fast, quick, short little bursts of incomplete information. Just give me the notes, give me the cliff notes, and I don't care how we get there. Give me the sum of the equation, but don't show me the equation or how that works. That's the equation, that's the sum. Don't worry about how we got there. If you're that person, you're not on the right channel. We're going to show the work. Charlie Purdy with a $20 super chat. Right on. Thank you, Charlie. Bikeman says, my newer desktop has a built-in 2.5 gig. Yeah, most new stuff is going to come with 2.5 gig on your motherboards and your routers. The only issue is the PC in the household with 2.5 gig is the only thing with 2.5 gig. So I'm still transferring at 1 gig. But it seems nice and quick. All right. Well, you're ready. You know what I mean? When you're ready to replace the network card, and you don't have to replace the network card inside, you just buy an adapter, plug it into those other computers you have. Type A or Type C, pick your adapter. Now you're all at 2.5. It's that easy and relatively inexpensive. You saw the prices. Peter VZ joining us from the Netherlands with a €2 contribution in Super Chat. Thank you, Peter, as always. Chris Garrett says he can't stand all the loud noise in the city. Yeah, it's one thing when you're young and you want to be in the rat race, but as Lily Tomlin said, the problem with the rat race is even if you win, you're still a rat. Mark Leibowitz says, he would say, you must learn patience, and the client will say, yeah, sure, learn patience. How long will that take? That's funny. Peter VZ says, that's what I also prefer, is to work at nighttime on PCs at my own speed. That always works best for me. I think I do better work. I think I enjoy it more. Get back to focusing on one thing without all the distractions from phones and doors and people talking and noise. It's so much to grab your attention. It's no wonder we're not all ADHD. You know, you can't drive down the freeway without billboard, 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 billboard. Just, there was a funny line in Ready Player One where he says that they've calculated how many ads they can put on the screen at one time before people have seizures. And they just do one less than that. Yeah, we're getting there. We're getting there. Mara reminds me of that whenever we're somewhere, we're seeing like a lot of ads. And then she quotes, I don't know what the quote is, but she knows the line. Andy Kane says, will it be the same with the switches all getting connected PCs to 2.5? Yes. Yeah. The switch that whatever you're connecting the PCs to, whether it's wires or wireless, the router or switch will determine or be a part of the determination of your maximum speed. So let's say this was all 2.5. Let's say we did everything the same, but instead of a 10 gig adapter, let's say it was a 2.5 gig adapter. That would mean this switch would need to be 2.5 gig or higher. So the 10 gig will still work. It'll just negotiate down to 1/4 speed. However, this is a lot more expensive than just buying a 2.5 gig switch. So you will need a 2.5 gig switch unless your Wi-Fi router already has 2.5 gig in the back of it and you have enough plugins that'll reach. Otherwise, you buy a 2.5 gig switch, plug it into your router has to have a 2.5 gig plug to plug the switch in. Otherwise, if it doesn't, just like we demonstrated here, anything plugged into the 2.5 gig switch, talking to each other, if they have 2.5 gig network cards all wired, will talk at 2.5 gigs. But the minute it goes to the internet, and the internet is 1 gig, then any of that will still, your internet will still be the same speed. So if you're transferring files from one computer to another, you want those wired into a switch. You take the switch, you wire that into your router. And so the speed then is determined by what you're talking to. The computer's connected to the switch. If they have 2.5 gig networking cards and you're running category 5E cables or 6 or 6A, anything better, will step down easily. Then anything connected with these wires will talk at the maximum speed allowed by the switch. That's it. So if this is plugged into a 10 gig adapter over here and this is plugged into a 2.5 gig over here, we're going to be running at 2.5 gig. That's the best we can do. If this is 10 gig over here and this is 2.5 gig over here, we're only going to run at 2.5 gig. Whatever is the slowest one, this will negotiate it. And then when we plug in to the router, we're plugging in at 2.5, which means that when we go to our internet, which is also multi-gig, we can get 2.5. Even if we've got 10 here, we're only going to get 2.5 out of that. And if we're on a wireless laptop upstairs, then we're only going to go as fast as the wireless laptop can go. The Wi-Fi will always be the slow point. And then, of course, the strength of the Wi-Fi, what Wi-Fi you're using, that's all going to determine your maximum speed. So even if the laptop upstairs, which is connected via Wi-Fi, wants to talk to the 10 gig NAS, it will only communicate at the fastest the laptop can go. The NAS will just easily, there you go, no problem. It's got plenty of bandwidth, and the laptop can only use a little bit of it. But this computer with a 10 gig card can use all of it through the 10 gig switch. And this can all happen simultaneously. One does not affect the other. That's the cool thing about it. At least in that demonstration, I do have to put a little asterisk, a disclaimer, and say, if you've got 30 people all connecting at the same time, even at 2.5, they're going to push the 10 gig. It's just that they're all going to get a faster speed up to whatever their device can do. And if a lot of them are really pushing this at the same time, it's going to work hard to deliver a faster speed to everybody that requires it up to their limit as fast as it can. But in this example I gave you with just one laptop and one computer, one will not affect the other. You wouldn't notice it. Okay. Richard Palmatier said I should try working in a casino all day. Wow, is it loud and smoky? Yeah, better you than me. Yeah. Ian McLeod said I live out in the country. The only thing I hear in the workshop is my music. Let me come live with you. It sounds lovely. And Nick Caffrey says, same here, Ian. Isn't it just so wonderful in 2024? Andy Kane says, thank you, Uncle Carey, for the info. Paul Gray wants to know, is there any reason why a 16 gig USB, what's a 16 gig USB, would work on one computer but not another? Are you talking about a 16 gig, like a flash drive? This isn't networking, right? We're just talking about a flash drive. 16 gigs, is there such a thing? Well, yeah, there is. 16 gig flash drive. Why would it work on one computer, not another? A couple of reasons. On the computer it's not working on, you either need to replace the USB drivers. You go in your device manager and just uninstall all the device drivers or the devices themselves. Delete them in the device manager and let it reload. The plug itself could be damaged. Try a different plug. Most computers have multiple USB ports. The other thing is you might have something else plugged in that's sucking up all the power, like an external hard drive through USB, and there's no power left on that particular port. So unplug any other USB devices you have, unless it's your keyboard or mouse. Obviously leave those alone. But if you have printers or hard drives or other USB storage devices, temporarily just unplug them and then see if the flash drive works. If you have USB ports in the front, try the USB ports in the front versus the USB ports in the back. Other than that, you know the USB flash drive works. So it's not the flash drive. So it's either a driver, something plugged in that's sucking up all the USB power, leaving none left for anything else, or a damaged port. You look inside with a flashlight and just see if there's any damage. Nick Cavery says, Carey, this was a dense series of videos. Thank you. There's a lot of information, but accessible for even amateurs like me. That's my goal. That guy gets it. He gets it. Thank you, Nick. That's what we were trying to do. We wanted to make this dense. We wanted it complete. We wanted it thorough. And we wanted it to be available so people could go back and re-watch it, because it's a lot to remember. Mike's Unboxing Review says, Carey, what's the next big project? I'm still going to have to recover from this. We're not done with this. As far as videos go, I think we're done with it. But Amara and I have a job ahead of us. The job ahead of us, very similar. You see how everything tied together, right? We showed the diagnosis and repair of this on a members-only video. We showed the unboxing review of the new Wi-Fi 7 router from TP-Link that we purchased. And then after the show, Mara, I put her to work, spent all night getting it configured just right so we get the best signal possible. I was diagnosing why the streamer was dropping my connection that's wired to the unit, because guess what? When it was wired to the new unit, it still did the same behavior. Imagine that. The streamer, which is the big red Gamdius case, remember, from Studio B? That's right here on the floor. I'm using it right now. After we moved, for some reason, this is just Murphy's Law, because it never did this at Studio B, I started getting a drop connection. So I said, well, the Asus, we were using a ET12 mesh system. It's got to be one of the mesh points. We're trying to figure out what the heck's going on. It's intermittent. The whole signal goes away and comes back like it's Wi-Fi, but I'm wired in to the mesh point. What's happening? So once she got this up and running, I started to test the streamer, which is down on the floor, and found there were 3 new BIOS updates. Shame on me. And they were massive. Like, it wasn't just the regular 0 to 100%. It was like, I'm doing the FSP MSR 18. I don't even know what it is. And then it would do the next one and the next one. And then finally it said the main BIOS. And I got the traditional thing. And this is on the ASRock B650 live mixer board. I was like, wow, that was intense. So that took a while, rebooted. And then the auto driver thing said, do you want to start the ASRock auto driver installer? But everything's already installed, but maybe there's newer drivers. So I said, yes. It said there's a new chipset driver, AMD chipset driver, and there's a new HD sound driver. Do you want to install them? I said, yes, I do. And now we've not had a single drop. So the whole time, I think it was the streaming computer, the whole time. But still, we wanted this anyway. So I think that the BE12, the older mesh, Wi-Fi 6E is probably fine and nothing wrong with it. And even though this never happened with this computer at Studio B, the timing of it with the new BIOS update and whatever Windows update probably clashed with the built-in 2.5 gig network card. It was a lot. And in a similar way, now that you've seen the 923 Plus, you've seen the 10 gig upgrade, you've seen the speeds, we're going to pull the drives out of this. We're going to swap the drives into the 418. Mara has 4 20 gig drives on the 418. It's massive. We're going to put those drives in here, and when we turn it on, it should come up with a screen that says, hey, you're moving this from a 418. Do you want to migrate it? It should be all automatic, and we say yes. We shouldn't have to worry about losing any data. It doesn't matter what slot we put the drives in. We don't have to put drive 1 in slot 1 or drive 2 in slot. Look, you know I'm going to. I'm going to put drive 1 in slot, but you don't have to. When you turn this on and you log into the configuration page, it should say, exactly, you've put a configuration in from the 418. would you like to migrate it to this 923? Because this has a different motherboard and different chips. So all the drivers and everything it needs to load are different, no differently than taking a hard drive out of one motherboard, sticking it into another motherboard. It may work, but there's going to be drivers that have to be updated, especially if you're going from an older motherboard to a newer one, which is a different chipset, so that it can operate efficiently. So anyway, Synology should auto-detect all this. You just click go ahead and migrate. And then when it's done, you're back in business. You've lost no data. All your shares, all your data are back the way they were. I'm not going to film that, but that's probably what we're going to do, if not tonight, then tomorrow. We're going to move the switch into the office next to where the Synology is, and we're going to wire the big helicopter PC, that's Mara's. We're going to put that 10 gig card in the helicopter and wire it to the switch, wire this to the switch, and that's all going to be in the office. And then the other wire goes to the main parent device that's also in the office. That's it. And that's the way it'll stay. And if anything doesn't happen the way I just said, I'll let you know. It should be very easy going from Synology to Synology. Now, if I was going from QNAP to Synology or, you know, a different manufacturer, that's a different story. So we've got a little bit of work ahead of us. The idea is that we're eating our own dog food. If I'm showing you products, that's great. You've seen it for 2 hours. What's it like to live with? Does it really make a difference? I don't know. I really don't know. The only way I really know, is it going to make a difference, is to just start using it every day. This is getting a little warm. Is that going to be a problem? I don't know. These get warm too. The faster it goes, the more expensive it is, and the hotter it runs, just like a car, just like practically everything on Earth. You want to run instead of walk, you're going to get hotter and you're going to need to cool down, and you're going to wear out, tire out sooner than if you're walking or if you're sitting. This is just the way the world works. Hot is normal at these speeds. Okay, this is still, I mean, this is pretty warm, but I can still leave my hands on it. Those little SFP transceivers, those can get so hot they can cause third-degree burns. That's normal. I wouldn't want that. No third-degree burn. I got to put on gloves like I'm taking something out of the oven? No, come on. Trevor Dunn said we did have a dropout for about 3 seconds earlier. So those dropouts you're seeing, the reason that's happening, I think, is we're at a very, very high bit rate. YouTube is telling me take my bit rate down. We picked the bit rate so that things don't blur when I move my hands, and we tried lower bit rates and higher bit rates until we found that when I moved my hands around with another picture-in-picture, the blur went away. And then I dropped that number down until the blur came back, and we got to around 15,000 megabits per second, which is extremely high, nearly twice the recommended for YouTube. So the YouTube servers have to take all this data I'm sending, and they have to convert it. And YouTube's saying, look, man, cut your bit rate in half. You're consuming a lot of server resources, and what's happening is the servers aren't keeping up. That's what I think is happening. The YouTube servers are just dealing with a bunch of other data streams from a bunch of other people all over the world, all uploading at the same time, and the resources I'm consuming are higher than they should be in order to get rid of the blur. I could probably reduce it a little bit, but YouTube literally wants me to cut it in half. If I cut it in half, everything's fine until I start moving around, and then you get the blur. I'm not quite sure what to do about that. Certainly will accept your suggestions because it's one or the other, and I prefer no blur. But it's not us. We are broadcasting perfectly with no dropouts on our side. I have had 0.0% of drop frames. I have not dropped a single frame at 1080 with a 15K bit rate for 2.5 hours. We're perfect on this side. So you got to blame YouTube and their servers on that side. I'm very convinced that's the answer. All right, any final? I don't know if I said $10 Australian from Paul Gray, watching us in Australia. Thank you, Paul. David Ice said he's getting a download of 791.7, so he's probably got Gigabit. He says he's got a 10 gig card with 7 gig fiber optics. Oh, I see. Yeah, you're getting close to 10 gig speeds. You're probably, again, if it's going to a mechanical drive, that may be your bottleneck on that. Ian says, I need another Squirrel of Doom in the new studio. We're working on it. We still have to get the studio set up. It's still in a construction phase, but good enough for me to broadcast. And obviously when I'm broadcasting, I can't be organizing the studio and broadcasting at the same time. And then doing this at the same time and getting all this set up. It'll happen. Nice and peaceful. We'll get there. Paul Connolly says, isn't it great to have Wi-Fi 7? I'm liking it. Yeah, I'm liking it. But it's so unlikely to be needed by most consumers. I would advise my customers to not spend the money. They wouldn't have any, my customers would not see any benefit from it. But me personally, yes. David, I said he's running an Eero Wi-Fi 7. Yeah, I've heard good things. Those are highly reviewed. Paul Connolly says, I have the joy of working on Cisco and Juniper. I don't think I'll be allowed to buy them for home use. Yeah, even if you could afford them. That's a whole different thing. Mark Leibowitz is telling Mara, based on her comment, that she doesn't like the consumer Wi-Fi 7 routers because it doesn't give her as much control. Mark Leibowitz says, you just proved me right. There's no such thing as an ex-network admin. Once a network admin, always a network admin. The only change is who you're doing it for. You're absolutely right, Mark. I can confirm. She's still a network admin and she's still behaving like a network admin. And I have told her, this is not corporate level stuff. You don't need to worry about that. She will not have it. There's nothing I can say to convince her that that level of detail and control is not required in consumer use. Do you know what difference that made to her? None. Yes, it is. Okay, I tried. I like to keep things as simple as possible. That's not simple. And apparently she likes complicated. That's just the personality of the person, right? Trevor Dunn said, in general, the video output is perfect. Well, thank you for the feedback, Trevor. I appreciate that. Thomas McT says, sounds like YouTube needs to be upgraded. Now, if we follow YouTube's guidance and we cut our bitrate in half, it'll probably solve that problem. So it's not like YouTube is saying what we're doing is okay. They're saying, hey, your stream's current bitrate is higher than the recommended bitrate. As a result, things could happen. So they're basically saying that's not our fault. If you want to drive faster than the speed limit and you crash into something and die, you probably wouldn't have died if you weren't going so fast. Not our fault. That was your decision. I feel like that's what YouTube's saying. David Graham mentions on the slow network, you just copy paste and go to sleep. My whole point of the slower copy paste is that you don't have to wait for that, right? You can continue to use your computer for other things while the copy is taking place in the background. But if you're a video editor and you can't begin video editing until you have the file locally, that's a different story. That means what are you going to do for 20 minutes while the file copy's over? So if you can reduce that down to 2 minutes or 5 minutes, you get to work faster and you're more productive. So there are cases where it's absolutely justifiable. There are cases where people just want it because, and then there are cases of people just being curious or deciding, no, absolutely not, that's a waste of my money. And that's my goal here, is to give you the information, not to give you the answer, because every answer will be different depending on the viewer. Your answer is right for you, someone else's answer is right for them. I'm not here to tell you what your answer should be. Mark Leibowitz says, no, she likes all the control and reporting that the corporate equipment gives you because it usually helps with problems like network connections mysteriously dropping out. And yet, I fixed that without any of that stuff. I did it in a very simple way, right? You can fix a problem in a complex way, and you can often fix the same problem in a simple way. I prefer simple. That's my go-to. And if simple won't work, then I will do more complex because I have to. But I only do that if I have to. Is that laziness? Is it efficiency? Call it what you will. Nothing that she was looking at would have fixed this problem. This was internal, I believe, to the BIOS or to a Windows update or to a chipset driver, probably related to a Windows update because it was working fine. And the only thing that could have changed are a result of Windows updates. And that new BIOS does something. They released it for a reason. And nothing on her end would have exposed that, other than confirming something's going on with that port. You have to be on that machine to figure that out. So those are basic things, right? Basic, simple diagnostics. Is there a newer BIOS? Is there a newer driver? Is the cable bad? Is the plug socket bad? Just visually inspect them. Looks good. Okay. Let's try that and see if it works. Hey, it worked. We don't have to go any further. On to the next thing. Close that book, close the ticket. As a field service technician, my job was to fix as many computers as quickly as possible, get it right the first time, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. And I would be measured against other techs that are in my team, part of my department, to make sure that I was keeping up, that I was fixing the average amount of computers per day that everybody else was, and that my fixes weren't coming back as another fix, that once it was fixed, it was done. And that determined whether or not you were going to get a raise, whether or not you were going to go in for some retraining, or they were going to let you go. So my whole career was based on get it done quick. It wasn't about the complexity. It's about keeping it simple. Get it done, move on. Get to the next one. Go, go, go. And if you can do it fast, and now they realize they don't need this other guy because he's half the speed as you, they're going to let him go and not even replace him. They don't need him anymore as long as they have you. Now they're going to save a whole annual salary from one tech because you're good at your job. On the other hand, a network admin has measurable responsibilities to requirements in corporations regarding regulations. And those regulations have to be met. Certifications have to be certified. Everything has to be done exactly the right way, or you screwed up. Now, of course, there's always a time ticking in corporate, no matter what your job is. So there's still, get it done. But that stuff's way more complex in general because of the requirements and regulations. So very different jobs. Mara said she was able to determine it was not the backhaul. Something other than that. Yeah, well, I'm not saying it was a waste of time. Diagnosing is still determining what works, right? It's a process of elimination regardless. And what you're left with after you've eliminated all these things that are all working should be the problem. But it could take you a while to get there depending on how many variables are involved in that equation. The cable, the router, the mesh, the band, the channel, the device you're connecting to. How strong is its signal? You can be so many variables. The drivers, the BIOS, the firmware on the router. John Lewis says, Carey, thank you. Great info. For sure this will last for a few vids. It'll save me money due to not replacing equipment unnecessarily. Recently, I blamed my mesh system for a dropped signal when it was my VPN. Man, I don't like VPNs. They just slow you down. $20 Australian from Paul Gray says, my dementia is kicking. Mara tells Paul Connolly, you're speaking my language, and that she's certified in DWDM and fiber. I don't know what any of that means. Barry Klein said, I eat a lot of fiber. Does that count? Mats Olaf says, Super Chat doesn't work for me today. That's odd. We enjoy having Mats Olaf joining us from Sweden and is a frequent contributor as well to the channel. I have no idea why that wouldn't work. Ian McLeod said, I've been mowing outside in the 90-degree heat, rather scatterbrained. We're getting some 90-degree heat here, which is 90 degrees Fahrenheit, which is relatively cool compared to the 110 we were having. Unfortunately, next week it'll be 3-digit temperatures again. It'll be 103, 106. I hope that's the last week of that. I'm so done with it. But today, actually fairly decent. In the night, we're dropping into the 80s. It's really pleasant at night. In the summer, when it's 110, 115, night still is 100. So even the night is unpleasant. We had a big, bright, full moon yesterday. It looked like we were really close to it. It was massive, full, and super bright. It's beautiful. All right, I think that'll wrap it up for today. So we're a little bit over time, but that's okay. I enjoy spending time with you guys, and as long as you have questions, I'll do my best to provide answers. And of course, other members in the chat also providing answers, so look to them if you have any questions as well. Thank you massively to all our members, our super members like Buster, Oystein, Frankie B, Paul Gray. These guys are amazing, very generous, very kind individuals. To all of our members in green, thank you guys for supporting the channel. For our viewers, those of you that are white in the chat room, thank you for hanging out with us. Thank you for being kind. And I never did answer Mike's unboxing, which is what's the next big project. That's because I don't know yet. My whole focus right now is on moving this equipment. And I hope that goes the way I described it. If it does, then my brain can switch and go to the next track, which is what's the next big thing. We have mini PCs from Miniswarm to review. What else? Not sure. I know next week, at some point, I'm going to be reviewing a Miniswarm PC. Mini PC. They're coming out with so much new stuff, it's hard to keep up. So I don't want to make a bunch of videos in a row because they don't sponsor us, you know, of Miniswarm stuff. So maybe 2 videos in a week, and even that's pushing it because we're doing it for free. At the same time, if we hold back, that means we're holding back information from you, which I don't necessarily want to do that either. But I also don't want Miniswarm to flood us with products and then we end up essentially being an unpaid sponsor with the same content over and over again. So I am trying to ration that out to not show any favoritism. If Miniswarm wants to pay us, that's a different story. So we have, I think, 3 Miniswarm mini PCs to review, and I think I'll do like 1 a week. So that's all I know at this point. I can't get my mind off of what's coming up here after the show. So I don't know. You could have said that a half an hour ago. Sorry. Sorry about that. Getting old. Yeah, I don't know. Something will come up. Thanks again to Mike's Unboxing and Reviews. If you've not checked out his channel, if you like my channel, I think you're going to love his channel. And he's out there in jolly old England. So they do have some products there we don't have here. But overall, he does a great job reviewing and demonstrating. He knows what he's talking about. He's not just an enthusiast. And yeah, very similar to our channel. I like it. I like it a lot. And Salem Techsperts. Oh, that guy's amazing out there in Massachusetts. Great YouTube channel. So if you combine Mike's Unboxing and Reviews, Salem Techsperts, Doug's live Windows training channel, another great one. And in that channel, I showed you the canned, whatever it's called, with the homesteading. Nice, peaceful, before bed. Watch that. Set your mind at ease. Highly recommended. Thank you, of course, to Mara for all of the work that she does behind the scenes. Wait.
You're welcome. Wrap it up.
She's telling me to be done. Are you anxious to put the Synology in place?
We have another problem that we need to resolve.
We have another problem. All right. Well, such is the life of a tech. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thanks to our friends at Acronis and RoboForm and VIP CDK Deals. VIP CDK Deals sells Windows licenses and Microsoft Office licenses that are guaranteed to work and are legal, legitimate licenses. RoboForm is a password manager. Acronis is backup and cloning software. We have videos on all of these subjects. If you search CareyHolzman space, Acronis space, Robo, whatever subject matter, we have whole videos just going through each product. Every product has a free trial, and every product is 30% off just to you guys, just to the viewers. All those links and information, along with the links of everything we showed today, are in our video notes below this video. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for all your support and contributions. Lagrinia with PayPal contribution. Buster, of course. Oystein, of course. Frankie B, of course. Paul Gray, of course. These guys are incredibly generous, and we wouldn't be able to do as many videos without your assistance and support. Thank you again. We'll see you all very, very soon. We always do members-only videos on Mondays. I don't know if there'll be a video this weekend. I don't think so, but there might be. Mondays are members only. They start at 1 p.m. Pacific time. And for those of you in green, I hope to see you then. Until next time, oh, thanks to Synology for sending us the unit, the drives, and the network card. We couldn't have done the video without their assistance. And it's a Synology. Do I recommend? Of course I recommend it. This is what I use personally. All right, guys. See you on the next one. Bye for now.